Before I begin, let me direct the committee secretary to acknowledge our resource persons for this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. May we acknowledge the virtual presence of our guests from the Department of Health, Director Faith Alberto, Director, Disease Prevention and Control Bureau, Mr. Erickson A. Feliciano, Development Management Officer 4, we have Mr. Rodley Desmond Daniel Carsa, Head Policy and Technology Section. From the Department of Education, we have Yusek Diosdado M. San Antonio. Good morning, sir. Yusek Nepomuceno Malaluan. From Regional Director, Region 6, Mr. Wilfredo Cabral. From the Department of Interior and Local Government, Yusek Rico Judge Hanbier Echeverry. Good morning po.
Good morning.
From the Union of Local Authorities of the Philippines, Mr. Jared Clarianes. From People's Television Network, we have Ms. Catherine Clu de Castro, General Manager, with Marie Nicolas Corporate Planning Head. From the NDRRMC, Mr. Manuel Rivera Jr., Chief, DRRM Development and Standards Division. From the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, Mr. Rex Schubach Jr. From the Coordinating Council of Private Educational Association, or COCOPEA, Attorney Joseph Noel M. Estrada. From DICT, we have Mr. Omar Sana. And from the DSWD, Ms. Mary Grace Blando. From the Union, sorry. That's all, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Did we miss any group? Did we fail to recognize any resource person? Pwede ho kayong mag-register verbally. All right, kung wala naman po, let me best to accommodate everyone. We will try our best to hear everyone out, but please bear with us as we go along. Today we'll be tackling a few bills and also two topics. The first part of this hearing will be an update from DepEd on where we are as to the class opening this coming August 24. And then the second part of the hearing will be tackling several bills that concerns with epidemic preparedness, disaster preparedness, and the new normal of the education sector. And let me just read into the records the bills that were filed by several of our centers. SBN 1674 filed by Senator Angara. SBN 1565 filed by yours truly. SBN 1460 filed by Senator. And this year's school opening is very challenging at best. And I know there are a lot of issues that we need to resolve and a lot of tasks that we need to resolve But I wholeheartedly support the school opening this coming August 24 because we need to make sure that learning continues and no one will be left behind. Dapat ho, kahit na sa ganitong pandemya, wala pong batang maiiwanan sa pag-aaral, lalo na yung mga mahirap nating mga kabataan. This is a time to make sure that education and learning continues, and we will exhaust all means to make sure that learning will continue, especially to our poor constituents. But having said that, I know there are a lot of challenges. There are a lot of issues that we need to tackle. I know that the senators have a lot of questions that they want to expound on. And right now, we will now turn over the floor to Yusek Maluluan, I think, no, who will give us an update on where we are insofar as the school opening is concerned. So I turn over the floor to Yusek Malaluan.
Yes, good morning, Honorable Chair and honorable members of the Senate present this morning, as well as all our co-workers from the executive department that are present, and all education advocates that are present also as resource persons. I am joined by a number of our undersecretaries and officials that will assist and respond to the queries as which are under their respective jurisdiction. But if I may be allowed, Mr. Chair, I would like to give a summary, an opening summary of the readiness update of where we are at as of today. So with the permission of the chair, if
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. Be assisted by my staff for a short PowerPoint presentation. Next slide, please. Ang atin pong paghahanda ay, as mentioned by the chair, very challenging, and this is new for us. But we are taking this challenge as observed by the Honorable Chair. There is a need to ensure that learning continues in a safe manner in this time of COVID. And our readiness components, as you will see, is quite complicated and very much involved, comprising 9 readiness components. Magmula po dun sa ating pagpapatala under the conditions of this pandemic or enrollment. Yun pong ating adjustments na ginawa sa ating curriculum, ang adjustments na ginawa sa paghahatid ng pagtuturo sa ating mga mag-aaral, ang ating adjustments na ginawa din sa learning resources na ginagamit ng mga mag-aaral, at kaakibat nito ay yung assessment changes, and of course the teacher training that has to continue, that has to be done, pag-mobilize ng very limited resources that we have under conditions of extreme stress, and of course the putting in place health standards, and finally ang kaya lang pong ibigay ng central office ay ang framework, options, and support, but at the end of the day ang atin pong mga field units ang may tungkulin na i-contextualize ito sa mga kondisyon ng kanilang nasasakupan in regions, divisions, and schools, because there will be no one size fits all. They must be adaptive as well as responsive to the concrete conditions on the ground. So dito po sa mga siyam na components na ito, allow me to give the latest updates. Next slide. With respect to enrollment po, as of today, as of yesterday at 5:30 p.m., we have a total enrollment in both public and private schools of 23, a little over 23 million. And this already corresponds to more than 83% of our enrollment last year. Ito pong 83% na ito ay higit na sa 80% adjusted target that we submitted to NEDA, anticipating that there will really be a reduction in enrollment because of the constraints and conditions this school year. Um, pero sa pampublikong mga paaralan po ay ang ating a big part of this 23 million overall enrollment is accounted for by the public schools. Ang atin pong enrollment ay almost nasa 21.3 million enrollment last year, and we hope that this will still increase, but expectedly it will not be nearer the level that the enrollment rate has happened in the public sector. And ito pong we have also monitored that there is already about 380,000 or so learners from the private schools that we have monitored having transferred to the public schools. Next slide, please. So yun po yung sa unang readiness component sa enrollment. Ito po ang ating enrollment figures. Ang pangalawa ay hindi ko itatalakayan ng malalim ito. This is just a pag-uulit ng mga nabanggit na natin. Ang pangalawang paghahanda na ginawa ng Department of Education ay repasuhin yung ating full K-12 curriculum and identify the most essential learning competencies, anticipating the difficulty of learning delivery as well as the need to adapt learning resources. We identified the most essential learning competencies to be the applicable curriculum only for these conditions of this school year. So from a full K-12 learning competencies of over 14,000 learning competencies relates to the knowledge, skills, and attitudes that must be taught to the students. We have identified about 5,689 most essential learning competencies, the indispensable learning competencies that need to be covered in the current school year. Ang pangatlo po, next slide please, na component ng readiness ay yung pag-adapt natin ng ating learning delivery modalities, at inuulit po namin na walang mangyayaring face-to-face na mga klase sa mga paaralan pagbubukas ng school year ngayong Agosto 24. Lahat po yan ay magiging through distance learning modalities, which will be a combination of what we call the modular distance learning, kung saan yun pong ating mga textbooks ay sinusuhayan o kinocomplement ng self-learning modules para maging gabay ng mga bata for self-directed learning and with assistance of also instructional partners at home, whether they be parents, siblings, or in the absence of anybody from the home, volunteers that can assist in case that the student really require a instructional assistance that the teacher cannot give remotely or no household member can provide. So ito po ang magiging backbone ng ating distance learning, is the modular together with the textbooks that we have. But they will be complemented as well where possible through online learning, where there is connectivity as well as gadgets. At yan po ay nalalaman namin dahil yung aming enrollment ay sinamahan natin ng survey. So we ask the households and the learners to accomplish a learner enrollment and survey form that provides us the information on the capacity of the learner and the preference of the learners for distance learning. And finally, to be complemented as well by television and radio-based instruction. Yung pang-apat po na component ng paghahanda ay yung pag-adapt natin ng ating mga learning resources. As I mentioned, ang ating pong existing textbooks ay gagamitin pa rin, at ito po ay ating iminamap sa ating most essential learning competencies. So kung ano ang present inventory ng ating mga paaralan, ng mga textbooks na siyang ginagamit kung ang mga bata ay pumapasok sa paaralan, ay ito po ay bibigay din, ipahihiram sa mga bata para madala sa kanilang mga tahanan. At gagaya ng nabanggit ko, dahil ang mga aklat pong ito ay na-design for classroom instruction at ang guro ay kasama nila sa habang sila ay pumapasok sa paaralan. Yan po ay dahil magbabago yung kondisyon at paghahatid ng pagtuturo ay kailangang magbigay tayo nitong tinatawag nating self-learning modules para maging gabay ng mga bata in taking their lessons at home. Bukod po dun sa self-learning modules na meron na ding mga assessment questions, ay maaari po itong isupplement pa ng mga guro ng activity sheets. So most of these are teacher-made activity sheets, but we, as I will show later, mayroon din po tayong supplemental learning resources mula sa mga existing partners. Mula po dun sa self-learning modules ay aming sinusubukan na may convert pa ang kung hanggang makakaya namin to educational videos o radio-based scripts or radio scripts na maaring ihatid through a broadcast medium, whether a television or radio. At bukod po dyan sa mga internally produced learning resources ng Department of Education ay meron din po tayong mga supplemental learning materials na naka-align din sa ating most essential learning competencies mula sa mga nagbibigay ng partnerships at nag-o-offer ng kanilang learning resources. At yan po ay in-evaluate natin kung alin ang pinaka mabisang mga agapay na mga additional learning resources, and we will deploy them also this school year. Next slide, please. Ito po ang paglalarawan nung sinabi nating learning resources. So kagaya po dito sa picture sa kaliwa, ako'y pumasyal ng isang araw nung linggo actually and Lunes during the kickoff in one small school here in Batangas City, actually unannounced, and I saw that they have already set up the existing textbooks for distribution to the learners, and they are now completing the self-learning modules. They have already set a schedule for a retrieval by parents by sitio on the opening of classes. Ito naman pong sa pangalawang larawan ay halimbawa ng aming self-learning modules. Nakalagay po dyan yung subject, pang ilang module ito. They are in consecutive order for the duration of the school year. At ito pong nasa gitnang ito na self-learning modules ay kung may panahon kami na mai-convert into interactive self-learning modules, may typographical error, that's ESLMs. Ang ibig sabihin po nito ay the same content which is in just plain PDF format is being converted into a format that may be used with some interactive components. Kagaya ng ito pong nasa kaliwang bahagi ng first picture dito sa third picture na ito, yung nasa mataas na bahagi, nakikita dito na yung outline ay nasa kaliwang bahagi at maaring puntahan ng bata interactively using a certain program. At gayon din, merong interactive activities na maaari nilang sagutin at isubmit yung sagot at it will digitally return a result kung tama o mali ba yung sagot. Ang napakalaki pong katanungan na umiikot sa pag-uusap sa kahandaan ngayon ay, so handa na ba itong mga materyales na mga ito? At as I mentioned, ito pong existing textbooks ay yan naman ay ng mga nasa paaralan, at so yan ay ang magkakaproblema dyan ay kung kulang, which is the same problem whether or not there is COVID. So kung may shortfall tayo talaga in the number of textbooks, whether or not the students will go to school or not, ay yung kakulangan ay naroon pa din. Pero kagaya ng nakita po ninyo, kung ang inventory natin ay sapat, ay itong mga aklat na ito ay kasama sa learning resources na mabibigay. Ang mga bago pong mga learning resources ay itong mga nasa bandang kanan dahil ito po ay kailangang ibigay sa kanila in digital format or in printed format. At next slide, ito po yung latest report sa amin ng through the self-assessment of our field units for the first quarter printing ng mga modules natin. Ang 38 bahagdan ng ating lahat ng mga dibisyon sa buong bansa liban sa BARM ay nasa more than 50% completion of the first quarter printing and about 61% out of the 214 SDOs are still in the less than 50% for the first quarter. Pero ang gusto ko rin lang pong ipahatid ay ang prioridad dito ay yung at least the first 2 weeks available. Kasi pag sinabi po nating first quarter, ibig sabihin yan ay yung kabuuang para sa 2 buwan ng pag-aaral ng mga bata. So, hindi naman po kailangang ibigay lahat yung buong 2 buwan. So, ang commitment sa atin ng field units natin is that at least the first 2 weeks worth of self-learning modules to complement our textbooks shall be available, and the succeeding weeks shall be made available on a rolling basis. Bukod po dyan ay maaari nating sabihin na may buffer tayo na at least 1 week dahil yung unang linggo po ng pagbubukas ng klase ay syempre i-devote ito sa pagbibigay ng orientation, ng psychosocial interventions at hindi pa necessarily ay formal na pag-uumpisa ng lessons nila. Syempre kailangan din ng familiarization. Halimbawa, yun pong aking paaralan na binisita na nabanggit ko kanina na maliit na elementary school dito sa Batangas City ay nakapag-orient pa lamang sila ng mga magulang na mayroong internet connectivity. So pag yung mga orientation nila mangyayari pa lamang doon sa schedule nila ng retrieval ng parents in the first days of classes, and hindi po isang araw lang ang retrieval dahil dinivide nila halimbawa by sitio itong pag-retrieve para makapag social distancing pa rin dito sa mga paaralan. Next slide. Ito pong TV and radio-based instruction, ang updates po nito ay hindi ko alam kung nakuto na.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Senator Nancy.
Your permission, Mr. Chair, before we move to the next slide, pwede ko lang itanong kay Yusek Malaluan kung may data na siya na may lugar ba na 100% na natapos yung printing. Because the data that you gave us right now is 50% lang eh. Meron ba lugar na talagang tapos na yung printing, hindi na problema yung kakulangan ng materyales?
Mayroon pong iba't ibang lugar na may 80 to 100%. So hindi po naka-reflect dito, maaari natin yang i-reflect later. Ang isa po sa ganito din po yung nangyari sa aspetong ito. Nagkaroon po ng downloading ang ating central office ng pondo to the regions down to the divisions. But even earlier, we have already authorized the utilization of the MOOE ng mga eskwelahan. So marami po tayong mga eskwelahan that were able to already finance ahead of the downloading of the central office funds. Bukod po dito, may mga lugar tayo na supported by the SEF local government units. So iba-iba po yung level, tama po kayo, na mayroon kung i-divide natin pa itong number na ito, we can submit to the Senate kung sino yung nasa 50 to 75 and then 75 to 100%. Pero may nakita po kami na may mga up to the 75 to 100% level of completion of the first quarter. But as I mentioned, ang first quarter po ay 2 months worth po yan ng SLM. So ang gusto po nating maisiguro ay yung first 2 weeks ay nakahanda at the opening of classes as a minimum for all our units, Madam Chair, Mr. Chair.
Senator Nancy, you're on mute.
Thanks. Yusek Malaluan. Kasi may kumakalat din ngayon na parang may mga fundraising for bond paper, for photocopying. Is there truth na parang may mga lugar na hindi nila kayang magpa-photocopy ng mga materyales na kailangan ibigay dun sa mga estudyante?
Well, ang atin pong at makikita mamaya dun sa slide ko dun sa resource mobilization ay ang atin pong sources ng pondo ay yung downloaded funds natin at ang atin pong ibig sabihin na-realign from our existing budgets for this is about I think about 9 billion at kulang po ito. In other words, kung titingnan natin on a one-to-one basis ay kulang itong amount na ito. So ito po ay sinusupplement ng SEF, ng mga local government units, sometimes in the form of printing equipment like risographs, paper, or even actual funds. Ang pangatlo po na source nan ay yun ngang sinabi ko kanina na inauthorize na nasa hawak na ng mga eskwelahan natin na MOOE na maaari nilang gamitin. Pero may pang-apat pong component yan, yung Brigada Eskwela at talaga namang ang ating Brigada Eskwela ay may national and local component. Although ito po ay sana ay at the school level ang paghingi ng suporta sa immediate community, hindi po ito sapilitan. Yun pong mga magulang siguro na nalapitan ng ating mga guro ay should not feel compelled to give their contributions. But totoo po yung sinasabi nyo. In fact, even in the school that I went to, I asked them kung anong kailangan nila. I asked if they needed paper. Ang sabi nila maraming nagbigay sa kanila ng paper. Ang iba po na ginagamit nila ay hindi for SLMs na printing. Ang iba ay maaring may SLMs kung dinownload from the division to the school. Pero yun pong nabanggit ko kanina, yung ibang mga guro natin ay gustong magdagdag ng activity sheets, not just those that are contained in the SLMs itself. And of course, yun pong activity sheets na ganyan ay hindi nasa decentralized na sa mga guro natin. And siguro yun yung iba ay in fact, ang nabanggit sa akin ay gusto nila yung paaralan na pinuntahan ko na supplement pa ng activity sheets at ang kulang nila daw ay printer ink. So, pag wala na silang MOOE o source ng funds, ay talaga pong may mga paaralan tayo at minsan ay mga guro na humihingi ng contributions or donations to supplement whatever we have. Dahil talaga naman pong kulang. In our, Mr. Chair, Madam Senator, in our original financing strategy, kasama po dapat doon ay ang paghingi ng supplemental budget. But we actually did not pursue that because in our coordination with the DBM ay wala na rin naman talagang puwang for supplemental budget given the amount that is needed for Bayanihan 2 for economic recovery in a condition of depressed revenue. So yun po talaga, Madam Senator, Mr. Chair, ang condition. So the reports that have come to you is happening on the ground, Madam Chair, Madam Senator, Mr. Chair.
Yusek Malaluan, dun sa table na pinesent nyo, yung less than 50% complete, sa tingin nyo ba makakahabol yan for the opening ng August 24 na at least kahit pa paano more than 50% yung ma-print nila?
As I mentioned, Madam Senator, ang amin po, Mr. Chair, ang amin pong ibig sabihin, ang commitment sa atin ay first 2 weeks. So yung pong first 2 weeks and then on a rolling basis on succeeding weeks ay ibig sabihin, it might not uh, because as I mentioned, it's for two months worth of SLMs ay pipilitin po natin na makapag-over 50% lahat. But as I mentioned, the priority is to have at least the first 2 weeks available on August 24, Madam Chair. We will see. This is updated regularly and consistently now as we near the opening. In fact, last night po ay hanggang alas 9 yung ating management committee with all the regional directors present, and ang pinag-uusapan na namin doon ay yung ibig sabihin, picturing and looking at how August 24 will take place, Madam Chair. So we will try, as you mentioned, na mag over 50 itong mga ito, but and hopefully dahil nga meron tayong na-download na central office funds in the last, if I'm not mistaken, and Yusek Ann is here on the exact time that this was actually downloaded to the field, ay makahabol itong printing materials. Yun naman pong naapektuhan ng MECQ because that is the report from our regions, ay yung pong ating MECQ has hampered the logistical operations of NCR and the immediate provinces of Region 4 and Region 3 for Bulacan. Ay makikita naman po natin na yung ating NCR dito ay mas malaking bahagi na ay nasa more than 56%. Ang isang dahilan po dyan ay itong NCR and parts of Region 4A and the immediate environs of NCR ay yun yung mas malaki ang capacity din ng mga local government units to support supplement itong resources for the printing of SLMs, Madam Chair.
Chair.
All right. Yusek, you can continue and finish your presentation, your update.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. To proceed, ang sunod po na ay yung pagsasalin at hindi naman ito magiging 100%. This is intended to be complementary, itong pagsasalin itong ating self-learning modules into TV and radio-based instruction. Again, bago pong larangan ito sa Department of Education, including the production as well as a pakikipag-ugnayan sa mga broadcast and radio stations, at yan po ay maibibig bahagi ang detalye niyan by our technical working group for TV and radio headed by Yusek Elaine Pascua and Yusek Josdado San Antonio. Gayon din po yung sa DepEd Commons ay maaring magbigay ng detalye yung ating ICT service. Pero ito pong DepEd Commons ay will follow the first 2 weeks na yung by 2 weeks na pag-upload parang 2 weeks in advance. So ang alam ko ay nag-uumpisa na i-upload noong ating DepEd Commons yung first 2 weeks. And doon po sa aming, mayroon po kaming Learning Resources and Platforms Committee, nagbigay ng mga komento yung iba't ibang units into how the DepEd Commons look like, what improvements can be made. So, but the specifics Mr. Chair, as they will be asked later, will be responded to by our undersecretaries that are directly responsible for these aspects, Mr. Chair. The next slide is, nabanggit ko po na hindi lamang internal learning resources ang aming i-deploy. Kung hindi, tinitingnan po din namin kung may mga supplemental learning resources na maaring manggaling sa mga partners natin na educators. Isa po dyan ay itong dynamic learning program developed by Ramon Magsaysay Awardees for Education, Dr. Chris Bernido and Dr. Maria Victoria Bernido. Ito po ay even pre-COVID is already a teaching method that promotes independent student learning. Kaya ito ay akbang-akma sa panahon na ito dahil talagang ang approach nito even before COVID is to allow for self-learning with a minimal intervention by a learning facilitator or a teacher. At marami na po silang activity sheets. They have worked with some, not just some private schools and their own school, but also with some public schools. And our public schools also attest to the effectiveness of this teaching method. Ang mga activity sheets po nito, ang nabanggit sa amin ay for most subjects in the junior and senior high school. In our last discussion with them, they are also consolidating what they have for the elementary level, and we will deploy them as supplementary learning resources, but not in printed form, but available digitally in the DepEd Commons for now. Ito po yung halimbawa nitong kanilang mga learning activity sheets by the Dynamic Learning Program. Isang halimbawa lang po itong inilagay ko dito, pero may iba pa po tayo na mga partners that we have evaluated to have a comprehensive amount of learning resources mapped to the MELCs and will be effective options for our teachers to deploy for distance learning. Next slide. Panglima po dun sa ating SHAM na readiness component ay itong assessment. Dahil sa bago ang pamamaraan ng pagtuturo ay kailangang mag-adapt din kung paano ma-assess yung learning progress nila. Ang isa po na hindi magagawa ngayon ay yung mga sit-down pen and paper tests in classroom setting. So kailangan po itong ma-substitute. At sa kasalukuyan po ay we are finalizing the review of the interim policy guidelines on assessment and grading. It will be issued if not this week, early next week. Kaya po nagtagal yan. Siyempre bagong paraan din ito. We consulted, aside from the submission of our Bureau of Learning Delivery, we also consulted a number of assessment experts from outside the department. And we also undertook focus group discussions with teachers themselves to see how practical a guide itong aming draft na ito. At in fact, marami sa mga editing that we are proposing to CI are inputs from teachers on the ground on the practicability of this interim assessment guide. At ito po ay grounded on the following principles. Kasama dito yung a bigger component on what we call formative assessment taking, rather than yung summative assessments na ang expression ay yun ang paper and pencil test at yung nakagawian natin na like a final exam. Maaari po itong ipaliwanag ng ating mga bureaus na kasama natin dito for details. Next slide. Ito po yung pang-anim ay yung teacher training. Ito po ang report sa atin dun sa self-assessment then by field units. Ang atin pong training ay ginagampanan ng iba't ibang units. Ang isa dyan ay yung National Educators Academy of the Philippines, ang ating pong ICTS or ICT service with respect to digital assisted teaching. Ito pong ating DRRMS dahil dun sa ating health standards at saka sa kanila din ang yung in partnership with our school health division ay yung wellness including mental wellness ay under them. And our regions and divisions are also conducting their own orientations on the conduct of this year, school year. And but there will be training opportunities that will continue throughout the school year. At halimbawa yung NEAP, I am familiar with it because it is being supervised from out of the Office of the Secretary. Ang approach po natin ay malaking bahagi yung practicum and yung pong training sa halip na maging balakid doon sa pagtuturo ng mga guro ay will assist them and make their teaching in this time easier because it will include the learning resources itself and how they are deployed. So dito po ay mas malaking bahagi talaga dahil syempre every school must know at least in the very basic on how this school year will be implemented at sa self-reporting po nila ay malaking bahagi na ang greater than 50% of the target coverage. At mas maliit na bahagi na lamang ang nasa less than 50%. Next slide. Ang pangpitong component ay nabanggit ko yung resource mobilization kanina. So yun yung recalibration ng DepEd budget through alignment and modification of our PAPs or project activities and programs, activities and projects. Itong use of the available balance of the school MOE, use of SEF. Mayroon din po tayong enhanced partnerships with development partners and access to official development assistance, although some of them are still under negotiation. But many of them are helping through technical assistance, Mr. Chair, sa panahon na ito. So at times, it is not big in amount, but the impact is big also because of the contribution to, for example, policy development, policy review, and so on. And the number 5 ay yung enhanced brigada eskwela natin to maximize private sector contributions in this time. Next slide. Ang pangwalo ay ito pong health standards dahil kung makikita natin sa ating mga simulations and dry runs ay hindi while a big part will be work from home ay talagang may physical component ang ating mga guro na pupunta sa paaralan for mobilization purposes for the delivery, and also we'll have to work with the barangays. We'll have to administer yung retrieval and pick up of learning resources, yung physical learning resources. So talagang may component na ang mga guro natin will have to go in physically into the school as their workplace. At syempre, kasama po dyan ay yung general health and safety protocols natin to increase the physical and mental resilience, reduce transmission, reduce contact, and reduce duration of infection. Mayroon po tayong testing protocol, but that does not, we do not call it mass testing dahil ito po ay indicated testing pa rin in terms of a symptom-based at saka exposure-based. But alongside yung detection natin, so dapat ay na-check parate kung meron bang may symptom. May referral process din tayo. And kung sakaling may exposure, then we have to do our own contact tracing from within the department itself. Kami po simula pa nung Pebrero ay nagbuo na ng COVID-19 task force. Yan ay has been continuing and has been giving us daily situational reports. Dahil yun po ating COVID-19 task force ay tagos hanggang sa field levels through by activating our DRRM unit. Nasanay naman po dahil ang Department of Education has to deal with natural calamities year in and year out. So we have an intact system for that. Ang kaibahan nga lamang ay syempre ay bagong klase ng disaster ito at hindi naman lahat ay nangangapa, if we can say that, with respect to full effective management of this COVID and support mechanisms. Yung panghuli po na component natin ng readiness ay yung regional contextualization. Next slide please. At as I mentioned, wala pong one size fits all at sa totoo ay ang malaking lessons natin at learning from innovation in the approaches can be shown by our field units. Iba-iba pong approach under different conditions and we learn from each other. Halimbawa, itong Navos School in a Box, ang isang naunang nagpakita ng kanilang strategy at maraming lugar ay adopted the similar approach. But mayroon pa kaming nakita na mga bagong approaches from our dry run and simulations. Ang alam ko po, I don't have the exact number, but we have conducted, I think, more than 300, I mean, close to 400 simulations around the country under various conditions. And for the kick-off event natin nung Lunes na nagkaroon ng technical difficulties, we picked 10 example dry runs. And if the chair will allow, we just pick just one video, that a short video that if the chair and the honorable committee will allow, if we can show, and that will end my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Yusek, I saw your presentation and at the end there are a list of videos that we can see. Kami na lang ho bahala to look at those videos later on, no, so that we can save time because we have two topics to deal with for today. But I'll share your presentation to the members of the committee so they can view the videos on their own leisure time. Thank you very much, Yusek, for that update. And before we receive questions, I'd like to recognize Senator Bongo for his opening remarks.
Magandang umaga po, Mr. Chair, at sa lahat po ng kasama natin ngayon sa hearing nito. Nelson Mandela once said, children are our greatest treasure. They are our future. I could not agree more. Our children's safety and well-being are of utmost importance. And it is our responsibility to ensure this not only in this time of COVID-19, but also as we usher in the new normal that comes with it. This is precisely what the bills being discussed here today seek to do, and for which I express my full support. Ang mga inisyatibong ito ay ang mga hakbang para matulungan natin ang ating mga kabataan na maging handa, lalo na sa mga hamong dala ng new normal. Given the present situation, kinakailangan na makapag-adapt, madagdagan o baguhin ang ating kurikula para matugunan ang mga pangailangan ng ating mga kabataan ngayong new normal at para makabuo rin tayo ng isang better normal. Bukod nito, dapat sakop din ng ating mga pulisiyang pang-edukasyon ng kahit anumang krisis o sakuna na maaring dumating. Let's be more proactive in our legislation so that we can prepare better. Tulad ng sinabi ni Pangulong Duterte, hanggat walang bakuna para labanan ng COVID-19, walang face-to-face classes na magaganap. Dahil dito, importante na makapagbigay tayo ng alternative modes of learning. Ang hiling ko lang po sa ating mga opisyales ay ang pag-aralan ang posibilidad na gamitin ang online at offline learning. Siyempre, ayaw nating maantala ang klase, ngunit mas prioridad pa rin ang kaligtasan at kalusugan ng lahat ng mga kabataan. Habang di pa po normal, sana wala na lang bumagsak para hindi na po ma-pressure ang mga estudyante. In transition to online learning, dapat mabigyan ng pantay-pantay na oportunidad ang mga estudyante kahit saan mang parte sila ng bansa at kahit anumang estado nila sa buhay. Kung tayo nga dito sa Senado ay nahirapan sa transition to online, paano pa kaya sila? Bukod sa mga estudyante, dapat alalayan rin natin ang ating mga guro. Dapat may angkop na trainings din para sa kanila. Regarding disaster preparedness in schools, sang-ayon po ako dito. This is why I am pushing for the creation of Department of Disaster Resilience. One of DDR's mandate is to work with our educational institutions in raising disaster awareness and preparedness. Maganda na magsimula na tayo ngayon. As we have realized in this pandemic, the cooperation of our citizenry is crucial in complying with lot of our necessary protocols, health or otherwise. This considering it is important that we educate and make our people aware of how they should behave during health emergencies and disasters at a very young age. Having said that, magtulong-tulong po tayo para mas mapaghandaan at mapabuti ang pag-aaral at pagtuturo sa ating mga estudyante. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Senator Bongo, for the reminders and also the words of encouragement. The floor is now open to questions. Any questions from our senators? Senator Binay, and then Senator Francis after.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Siguro bago ako mag-umpisa magtanong, Mr. Chair, pwedeng i-follow up if you remember during the previous hearing, nag-request mo tayo ng mapping. Can we just get an update if they are already submitted?
We have not received any mapping document or document that pertains to mapping from DepEd. Maybe
Chair.
get an update from DepEd.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Yusek Umali.
yung mapping po na hinihingi ng ating kagalang-galang Senadora Nancy Binay ay dapat po nakapaloob po doon sa regional contextualized learning continuity plan po na kakasumiti lang po natin kaninang umaga po, Mr. Chair. Bukod po doon, yung overview of where we are right now, dapat po ay nakapaloob din po dito sa slides na kakapakita lamang po ng aming pangalawang kalihim, NEPA Malaluan. Thank you po, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So, Yusek Umali, I'll repeat, no? Yung sinabit nyo kaninang umaga lang contains the mapping. Mapping meaning identified areas where internet is prevalent, where teachers have access to internet. All of these details, andun ho yun.
Apo, detalye po kung ilan po sa ating mga mag-aaral ang may access to internet, tama po yun. Pero baka po hindi yung itong lugar na ito ay mayroong internet connectivity, ito'y wala, is more on yung sagot po ng mga bata, kung meron po silang access to internet, kung meron po silang gadget, meron po magulang na maggagabay sa kanila, mga ganong detalye po, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we will. I'll try to retrieve the document right now so we can show it on the screen para real time yung pagpakita natin. So in the meantime, Senator Bina, you might want to ask other questions.
Mr. Chair, we'll just wait for the submission. Siguro kay Yusek Malaluan, pwede balikan lang natin yung in the first slide, you mentioned yung total enrollment. But ano ba talaga yung exact figure ng bilang ng mga estudyante na hindi talaga makakabalik for school year 2020.
If you can put it up. Yes. Madam Senator, Mr. Chair, kaya po namin na ipineg ito sa last school year ay gusto nating ma-benchmark base dun sa nakaraang taon. Pero under normal circumstances, ay ito po ay nadadagdagan, if I recall correctly, by about 2%. But I hope our planning director is here. I just gave Madam Chair, Madam Senator, my recollection na halimbawa ito pong last year's enrollment na ito, kung walang COVID ay tataas po yan ng inaasahan ng mga about 2% more. So ang nababawas po dito sa nakaraang taon ay yung nag-graduate ng grade 12 pero may papasok naman na bagong batch ng mga kindergarten students. So but hindi naman po napakalaki yon. So ang sa tingin namin ay a good indicator of our level of normal participation would be from last year's enrollment. At kung makikita po natin dito, at this level ay at the public sector were 1 million less than last year. But from the private schools, their enrollment is almost about 2.8 million less than last year. So kung susumahin po niyan ay meron tayong ibig sabihin non-participation, extraordinary non-participation on account of COVID as of today, that is about 4 million learners, Madam Senator.
We have more or less 4 million out of school youth for next school year.
Yes, yes, Madam Senator, and very truthfully, pinag-usapan namin yan sa department, how we will address that expansion for this year of our non-participation. And but as of this time, our main focus for now is really those that have enrolled for the opening, but we will discuss in greater detail how we will address this non-participation. Halimbawa, what interventions can be done for this non-enrollees to still be able to access learning opportunities, although may mga usapin ho dyan like yung pag-advance nila or pag-promote nila to the next grade level will be issues and policy issues that we will have to discuss within the department. But it is an extraordinary year as far as our participation rate is concerned, Madam Senator.
Ba kayong na-plot niyo na ba to? Like for example, NCR, ano yung ilan dito yung hindi nakapag-enroll or ilan lang dito yung nakapag-enroll? Meron na ho ba kayong ginawang parang, well, it's another type of mapping?
Yes, that is readily available.
Kung saan talaga bumagsak yung enrollment kung saan lugar.
Yeah, Madam Senator, that data is more readily available doon sa internet coverage kasi po yung sa internet coverage na hinihingi nyo na mapping ay mas mahirap bigay ang detalye. Pero yun pong enrollment up to the local and even up to the schools level ay may datos po tayo niyan. So we can provide that a more detailed data of this up to division level siguro just for clarity, but if there's interest up to the school level, kung may particular school, we can provide that data, Madam Senator.
Okay, Isaac, maybe you can just submit to the committee. And then, kanina ho, nabanggit nyo na yung, I think, first week or first 2 weeks will be devoted to orientations. Tama po ba?
Yes, sa first week ko, syempre, as I mentioned, merong mga nakapag-preliminary orientation na, pero hindi po lahat pa. So, as we distribute the learning resources, come opening, ay may mga familiarization pa at maaring hindi ka agad mag-umpisa immediately yung formal class taking. At si Secretary Briones also made the directive na mahalagang mahalaga yung psychosocial interventions at this time to prepare them. And also some of the health standards that is peculiar or particular to the present situation. In fact, I'm sure that even I mean this orientation should help also our teachers even because hindi naman ibig sabihin kahit dun po lang sa mga usapin na proper wearing of masks, for example, how do we take care of ourselves in the home setting, hindi naman porke nasa bahay ay ligtas lahat dahil talagang lahat ng kabahayan ngayon ay may lumalabas. So those we are preparing or we have prepared materials for that at yun ang malamang ay sa unang linggo ay kaya ko lang Madam Senator nabanggit na malamang ay binibigyan din namin ng flexibility yung aming mga regional directors kasi kung mayroon pong mga paaralan na maagang nakapagsagawa ng orientation even before 24, eh di baka mas maaga silang mag-umpisa na kaagad ng formal classes at the beginning. But as I mentioned, expectedly hindi pa siguro naaabot lahat. Ang mas nakaabot talaga ay yung mga kung saan kami nag-dry run and simulations na nangyari. So yung mga eskwelahan na yon ay advanced na, nakapag-orient na ng mga magulang, ng mga bata, na nakapagbigay na ng uh, at least 1 week's worth of lessons. So medyo may familiarization na. But it's not true for all of our schools, Madam Senator.
So, Isaac, meron din naman mga estudyante na they can start by August 24 doing yung mga self-learning modules nila.
Yes, Madam Senator. In fact, lalo-lalo na yung may access to the DepEd Commons then as I mentioned first 2 weeks at the minimum we're advanced at any point in time yun yung gusto po natin na laging may 2 weeks worth of learning resources in advance yung mga bata. Mahalaga ito para makita din ng mga guro how to strategize for the week as well as the parents themselves and the learners also. Madam Senator.
Mr. Chair, siguro yung muna to give time to my other colleagues. Thank you,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Binay. Senator Tolentino is recognized. You're on mute, Senator Tolentino.
Good morning. Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Salamat po, Senator Gatchalian, with the permission of my colleagues, Senators Binay and po. I have some questions directed towards DepEd and ULAP. Is the ULAP representative there, Governor Dax Kua?
Yes, they have a representative from ULAP.
Yes. Ganito po last Monday, I first I'd like to thank DepEd for pursuing some measures that would really accommodate our present situation. But last Monday, I happened to browse an article quoting Secretary Briones, and this is not the direct words. We are doing everything in so far quote unquote, this can be perhaps a paraphrase, quote unquote, we are doing everything to extend the limits insofar as the law is concerned. So ginagawa nila lahat ng DepEd yung pwedeng gawin sang-ayon sa batas. But apparently, Mr. Chairman, Secretary Briones is referring to Republic Act 7797. Kaya pinipilit nila na August 24 kasi nakatingin sila doon sa old law, Republic Act 7797. And Mr. Chairman, I would like to remind the DepEd family that there is now a Republic Act 11480 na ipinasa ng Kongreso at pinirmahan ng ating ni Pangulong Duterte noong July 17. And from my own personal research, the said law is effective July 20, 2020. Effective na po yun kasi na-publish na po yun sa official gazette. And I'd like to remind the DepEd officials listening, there is a provision in that law, specifically Section 2, and I quote verbatim, implementing rules and regulations. Within 30 days, upon the effectivity of this act, the Department of Education, in consultation with relevant stakeholders, shall, ibig sabihin ng shall, mandatory, issue the necessary rules and regulations for its effective implementation, unquote. So, ibig sabihin po dito, yung 30 days will expire August 19. Wala pa ho ako nababalitaan na nag-conduct ng consultation meeting ang Department of Education para palabas, ibalangkas yung implementing rules and regulations ng Republic Act 11480. Nakakapasa lang sa Senado, sa Kongreso, at effective na po. Ito po yung batas na pwedeng i-postpone on a regional basis, staggered. Nakita ko kanina yung mga datos, 50% pa lang yung preparedness. On a regional basis, yung opening ng klase. Ang tanong ko po ganito, kailan po gagawin ng DepEd itong implementing rules and regulations? Magtatapos na po ito next week, August 19, yung period na binigay ng batas. At kung wala pong pandemic ngayon, napakahalaga po nito August 19 sa DepEd, simula pa lang unang bata ako kasi ito po yung linggo ng wika na lagi pong sinusunod sa saan man sulok ng Pilipinas. Linggo ng wika, Manuel Quezon Day. So, at tanungin ko po ang DepEd, kailan nyo ilalabas itong implementing rules? Siguro kung ginawa nyo na ito, ay maaaring hindi nagkamali si Secretary Briones o baka na-misquote lang siya ng dyaryo kasi ang tinutukoy pa niya ay yung old law. Kaya nagkakandara pa lahat kayo na makaabot ng August 24 kasi hindi kayo nakatingin doon sa bagong batas dahil hindi nyo pa ginagawa yung implementing rules. And I would like to get, if there is a governor present or a city mayor present, their corresponding reaction kasi dapat tanungin din po yung mga local government units. Yun po yung unang tanong ko para sa DepEd, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Umali.
Yusek Umali, I can respond first,
the chief.
and then you can give your response. Tama po, yung nabanggit ni Senator, in fact, madami ay ang alam ko ay co-authors nitong batas na ito na nilagdaan ng Pangulo noong July 17 as mentioned by the Honorable Senator. At alam po, batid po ni Kalihim Briones yan, hindi po yung dalawa pong batas na yan ay co-existing, yung nabanggit niya as amended by this law. And as mentioned, in the conditions as now, where there has been declared a national calamity or emergency, ay ang Pangulo ay may kapangyarihan na mag-set ng school opening lampas doon sa itinakda noong inamyendahan na batas na hanggang katapusan ng Agosto upon the recommendation of the Secretary. Ang amin pong legal department at saka LLO ang siyang na may naatasan na mag-conduct nung nabanggit ninyo na consultations for the uh, uh, for the development and promulgation of the implementing rules and regulations. Pero ang amin pong position din sa Department of Education ay ang elements nito ng batas na ito ay very straightforward, and it can be, while waiting for the IRR, can be exercised already by the Secretary and the President. At sa isa naman pong aspeto
So,
na
tanong ko
yan,
po, Yusek Umali, nag-conduct na ba kayo ng consultation? Kasi itong present virtually sa hearing ngayon ni Senator Gatchalian, ito po lahat yung stakeholders. Ito po lahat yung dami na natin na pag-usapan. Nag-conduct ba kayo ng hearing na sang-ayon sa tinatakda ng Republic Act 11480? Yes or no lang yun?
With the permission of the chair,
Hindi.
Yes, Yusek Umali.
So, hindi
Or-
po.
the answer is the way it's
Kasi,
opo,
yes.
the way it was asked kung
Nag-hearing na ba kayo? Kasi hindi na imbitahan din ng committee namin, yung committee ni Senator Gatchalian.
the answer
Kasi
is
kung hindi pa kayo nagko-conduct ng hearing, ang ibig sabihin, hindi nyo tinutupad tong batas, nakatali kayo doon sa inyong hinahabol na August 24. Kaya tayo hirap na hirap dito kasi imipetsa kayong tinakda. Samantalang yung batas ay nagbigay sa inyo ng palugit na pwedeng i-adjust yung finish line, pwedeng gawing yung halimbawa, yung hindi pa low risk areas, yung mga areas na mahina ang connectivity, pwedeng sa October na, pwedeng sa November na. Yung po yung spirit of the law. Nabigyan po kayo ng karapatan na i-adjust yung opening as long as you will comply with the 220 days requirement. So ang tanong ko ulit, nag-conduct na ba kayo ng hearing? Ng consultation?
the way it was asked, Mr. Chair, yung consultation halimbawa po sa mga stakeholders na nandito po ngayon, wala pa po yun, pero
Yun.
mahalagang
So you have
maitagdag po.
ang deadline po, Yusek Umali, ang deadline po na tinatadhana ng batas ay August 19. Dapat labas na yung ating implementing rules. Next week na po yun.
Wag po tayong
Next week
mag-alala,
na.
Mr. Chair.
Linggo ng wika.
Senator
Hindi pa
Tawag.
nakakita ng kopya yung committee ng inyong draft implementing rules and regulations.
Opo, Senator Tol, Mr. Chair, wag po mag-alala ang ating pong butihing Senador Tol Tolentino po. Yung bahagi ng konsultasyon, kung hindi po mangyayari po ngayong linggong ito, ay sa susunod na linggo po namin gagawin. Senator, Mr. Chair, meron na po kaming draft na nagawa. Meron po kaming proseso po kasing sinusunod pag gumagawa po ng IRR. So, kaagad-agad pong inutos ng aming kalihim na balangkasin po itong IRR na ito. So, very quickly, we start with a working draft, and then led by our legal department, ay nagkaroon po ng several within department meetings. Siguro nakaka-4 o 3 meeting na po ito. Hindi po yan bababa sa 3 pagpupulong. At yung produkto po dito ay mayroon po siyempre muna kaming working draft na ipepresenta po dun sa aming kukonsultahin. The way we...
Yun na nga, Yusek Umali, ang hinihiling ko. Sana, hingan din natin ng inputs itong mga stakeholders na nakikinig ngayon sa inyo. Itong mga bumubuo ng sa pribadong sektor, yung mga teachers association, yung mga magulang, na sa ganun, meron din silang maibahagi sa na inputs dito sa lalabas na implementing rules, at kasama po yung mga local officials kasi po sila na naman ang bubunok nito. Paano kayo mag-o-open ng eskwelahan sabay-sabay ng August 24 kung yung ibang mga lugar sarado, naka-lockdown, walang kinikita yung mga magulang, walang trabaho, walang livelihood, paano makakatulong sa kanilang mga anak yon? So, we have to consider all 3 factors. 1, health. Number 2, livelihood. Number 3, yung interconnectivity. When you craft the implementing rules for Republic Act 11480. And if you're planning to do that next week, ayun na po yung deadline, linggo ng wika. Ironically, August 19. So, Mr. Chair, kinakabahan po ako rito na baka hindi makakomply.
Abisuhan na ngayon kaagad yung mga stakeholders na nandito. Makakaasa po kayo, Mr. Chair, Senator Tolentino, na lahat po ng mga stakeholders ay makukonsulta. Meron lang po kaming, natapos na po namin yung bahagi, katatawag ko pa lamang po, pati po yung mga regional offices po namin, at meron na po kaming very good working draft to present to the stakeholders. Makakaasa po kayo, Mr. Chair, Senator Tolentino, the way we crafted the IRR of the K-12 law, we consulted everybody, the school feeding law, the Universal Kindergarten Act, the other education-related laws, the way DepEd is always doing this, Mr. Chair, Senator Tol, we will consult them.
Sana po, Yusek Kumali, within this week, mabigyan nyo kami ng kopya ng draft. Gusto talaga namin makatulong sa inyo, yung mga governors gusto makatulong. Wala kaming kopya, ulitin ko, mandato ito ng batas sa inyo at pwede kayo magkakaso rito pag hindi ginawa itong implementing rules. Nakalagay dito, shall within 30 days. And that 30 days will expire August 19. And today is now August 12. So you have 7 days to go.
Yes, Mr. Chair, at gusto ko lang pong idagdag, yung 15-day publication requirement, hindi po kasama yun dun sa 30 days. Kaya we are still within the time period at we assure this honorable committee.
You're probably misinformed, Yusek Kumali. Ang nakalagay po sa Section 4 ng Batas, Effectivity, this act shall take effect immediately upon publication in the official gazette. And it was published in the official. Can you compute that? Ilan yun?
No, I stand corrected, Mr. Chair. I don't want to, I have no intention to confuse our good senator. Wala po akong ganun ibig sabihin. Basta ang sinasabi ko lamang po, yung mangyayari po yan within the period. Siguro I'll just put it that way. In other words, we don't mean na ipasok pati yung publication requirement within the 30-day period. We will may make this happen, Mr. Chair, Senator Tol, and we'll provide the good senator a copy of the draft.
So lalabas Yusek Kumali, yung finish line mo ay September 3 na. Tapos na yung August 24. So this is now reach a very complicated situation involving all the legalities here. So sana madaliin natin ito kasi matagal na naman to na publish. Apparently nakalimutan nyo, nakaligtaan nyo in your rush to meet the August 24 deadline, which has been amended by Republic Act 11480. Yun lamang po, Senator, Mr. Chairman, ang naitanong ko at sana po makahabol ang DepEd. Napakarami po nilang hinahabol ngayon, pero ito pong requirement ng batas ay dapat i-comply po nila ito.
Well said, Mr. Chair, and we will comply and we still have time. Yun lang po yung sinasabi namin. Hindi pa po kami huli, Mr. Chair. Thank you po. We'll give the good senator a copy of the draft po. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yusek Kumali, susugan ko lang yung sinabi ni Senator Francis. Talagang minadali itong batas na ito precisely to give the PED the flexibility. Dahil nga very uncertain yung mga nangyayari ngayon, para mabigyan kayo ng flexibility na mag-postpone ng class opening, ito ay rinash ng Kongreso at ng Senado. At again, we just want to remind the Department of Education na sumunod po doon sa mga nakasulat sa batas para ma-implement ho kaagad. And pakisubmit na lang ho sa amin, Yusek Kumali, a timetable on when do you plan to conduct the consultation as well as the publication para masundan po namin here in the committee.
Opo, maraming po salamat, Mr. Chair, and we really appreciate the intervention of the good Senator Tolentino. Salamat po, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I want to call on Senator Lapid kung meron mga katanungan. Any question for Senator Lapid? Kung wala po...
Senator, one last point, Senator Gatchalian.
Yes, go ahead, Senator Francis.
Salamat po sa reminder ng committee and reminding again the Department of Education that they have 168 hours They have 168
Yung
hours
module,
to consult with all the stakeholders,
Kung magkano
draft that
magagastusin
implementing guidelines, and to furnish this committee and to inform the nation that they have done the IRR. So you have 168 hours, Yusek Umali.
Alright. Ibig sabihin, Yusek, wag na ho kayong matulog. Yun ang ibig sabihin ni
Then we will
Senator
comply po.
Francis.
We appreciate the intervention. Thank you po, Mr. Chair. We will comply. Opo.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Senator Nancy.
siguro idadagdag ko lang dun sa discussion. Kay Yusek Umali, may window pa ho ba na magbago ang isip ng DepEd to move the school opening?
I will ask Mr. Chair, please, our Chief Nepo to reply on that po.
Madam Senator, Mr. Chair, si Secretary Briones po ay nagbibigay ng updates parati kay Pangulo at hindi ko lang alam kung may schedule sila this week. It is a matter for the in that update whether a recommendation would be made by the secretary in the course of that update. So maaari pong mangyari yun this week. And in the end, it will be for the president's decision based on hindi ko po mapangunahan ang aming kalihim kung ano ang kanyang tatalakayin kay Pangulo sa pagkikitang iyon. Nakatatlo na po, pang-apat na, at ang aming pong legal position din dito ay habang hinihintay natin itong IRR ay may aspeto itong batas na ito na complete in its terms, which is the authority of the president to set a different date upon the recommendation of the secretary. At the same time, we agree with Senator Tolentino as well as the Honorable Chair na kailangang maipagpatibay yung implementing rules and regulation na ito with due consultation to the stakeholders as provided by this amendment to the school calendar law. So, hindi ko po masabi sa inyo, as I mentioned, I'm not in a position to speak for the Secretary on this matter in relation to the update or presentation that she may have with the President. And I'm not even privy to whether a schedule has been agreed.
But Yusek Malaluan, si Secretary, well, sa mga press release has always maintained that she wants to push through with the August 24 opening. So parang dun sa statement nyo, pwede bang magbago or at the moment, Secretary is still recommending to the President that we push through with the August 24 opening?
With the kind indulgence of Senator Nancy, going with that question, Yusek Nepo, the August 24 opening was premised on bubuti na yung sitwasyon natin. At from ECQ, pupunta sa GCQ, at bubuti na yung sitwasyon natin. Pero meron kasing supervening event. Ito yung pagbalik natin sa MECQ. And itong pagbalik natin sa MECQ in NCR, in Bulacan, Cavite, Laguna, created a lot of uncertainty. I'll give you a very specific uncertainty. Yung mga teachers natin at principals ngayon, hindi nila alam kung itutuloy nila yung distribution ng self-learning modules house to house under MECQ. So ngayon, kahit printed na, based on my survey and information, walang nagdi-distribute. Dito sa amin sa Valenzuela, hindi pinadistribute kasi nga takot ang ating mga guro at baka ma-infect sila. Ngayon, magkakaroon ng decision whether, and next ang question ko is, itutuloy ba itong MECQ o babalik tayo sa GCQ? At malalaman lang natin yung sagot na yan, typically on the last day, which is August 19, no? Because that is the last day of the 2-week MECQ. Ngayon, kung August 19, hindi itutuloy ang MECQ, ibababa tayo sa GCQ, we have 5 days till August 24. Kaya ba i-distribute yung mga self-learning modules from August 19 to August 24 when the class opens? That's number one question. And then number two, assuming matuloy ang MECQ in these areas, what will be the decision of the Department of Education? Because obviously, under MECQ, our teachers will be put at risk pag di-distribute nila yung mga materials. It's not only our teachers, yung mga kabahayan natin, kasi gagalaw ngayon, magdi-distribute bahay-bahay nationwide. So, first question is, kaya ba from August 19 to August 24 mag-distribute ng self-learning modules? At pangalawa, assuming ma-extend itong MECQ, what will be the decision?
With the permission of the Honorable Chair,
Yes, go
as
ahead,
well
Yusek.
as to respond to Madam Senator's question. First is, dun po sa framework na binabanggit by the Honorable Chair na August 24 was set in anticipation of a better situation. Hindi po eksaktong ganon yung aming pagtatasa ng learning continuity plan. In fact, ito pong learning continuity plan takes in, ibig sabihin, under various quarantine conditions. Kaya nga po may pure distance learning modality dito. Dangan nga lamang, at totoo po yung sinabi ninyo na one of the distance learning modality, to the extent that they will be using printed modules that will have to be retrieved physically, ay meron pa ring physical movement as the chair mentioned. And in conditions of MECQ ay hindi lamang po yung aming mga kaguruan ang may limitasyon, because we are ang amin pong work arrangement dapat dyan ay skeleton force, and not the ang inadapt namin beyond MECQ ay up to 50%. But in skeleton force ay mas mababa. But the households are also prevented from going to the schools kung wala silang special permit to go out of their household. So tama po yung nabanggit nyo na yon, pero just to clarify na hindi nakabatay yung learning continuity plan na walang MECQ, because it was precisely designed to allow for learning continuity under various circumstances. Kaya din po inimbitahan natin yung ating dalawang regional directors, ang Region 4A kung saan may coverage doon sa lalawigan ng Laguna, Cavite at Rizal, at saka ang NCR na pinakamalaking na natamaan nito. Yun pong covered ng MECQ ay ang total enrollment ay a little over 4 million, or about 20% of our total enrollment. So kung mamarapatin by the Honorable Chair, if we can ask Regional Director Willie Cabral and Regional Director Malcolm Garma on the adjustments that they will make in the context of the MECQ constraints in relation to the August 24, Mr. Chair.
My point, Yusek, no? The reason why we move to MECQ is because the situation is worsening, no? And we need to arrest that situation. And ang pinaka-basic component ng learning continuity plan is yung self-learning module na i-deliver bahay-bahay o pipick upin sa school. Pero paano natin gagawin yun if the situation is worsening? Yun ang punto ko eh. And we don't have any way of predicting after August 19 kung mag-i-improve o hindi mag-i-improve ang situation. And there's also a big chance na baka ma-extend ang MECQ, no? Because I know for a fact that some doctors are requesting ma-extend in MECQ at least. So my point of the matter is how can we mobilize yung teachers ho natin if the situation is worsening? No? And this goes to the point ni Senator Francis na kaya ho in-enact itong bagong batas natin, itong RA 11480, is para kung nag-worsen ang situation at lumala talaga yung sitwasyon, meron tayong ganitong batas na pwedeng magbigay ng flexibility. My recommendation is kung ang areas ay ma-extend ng MECQ, we should just postpone school opening on those areas. Because hindi natin pwedeng palakarin ng mga guro natin, palabasin ng mga magulang natin sa isang kondisyon na lumalala. Kaya nga ho tayo nag-MECQ dahil lumalala ho yung sitwasyon. At sasabihin natin, sige, labas kayo at di-deliver ho natin yung mga materials natin. Yun po talagang magkakaroon tayo ng malaking problema sa ating mga guro at sa ating mga lugar. So ang recommendation ko, kung ang MECQ po ay ma-extend, we trigger itong bagong batas, itong RA 11480, para po i-postpone yung class opening doon lang po sa lugar because that condition is worsening. Talaga hindi yung nag-i-improve at hindi naman kasalanan ho ng DepEd na hindi ho nag-i-improve in situation. Talagang ganun po yung nangyari.
Mr. Chair, if I may be allowed to just a quick remark. Sa tingin ko po ay hindi pipilitin sa mga lugar na ito na palabasin yung mga magulang natin at mga guro para mag-distribute ng learning resources physically. Dahil unang-una ay may pagbabawal nga po, skeleton force lang ang pwedeng lumabas. So hindi natin maaaring lumabas yung mga guro to interact with even with barangays and so on. At gayon din, ang mga magulang o mga kabahayan natin ay may limitasyon din ng kanilang movement. Kaya po baka maaari nating pakinggan si RD Willie Cabral natin ng Region 4A kung paano ang adjustments na kanilang napag-usapan to meet such a physical limitation na kinikilala po natin. Ganun din ang NCR.
Okay. Sige po, before I recognize si Director Cabral, Senator Nancy, any follow-up questions?
Sir, pasagutin muna natin siguro.
Sige po. We'll recognize.
Mr.
Yes.
Chair,
Yusek Yumali.
Opo. Ipagpaumanin po ninyo, Mr. Chair, pero maganda mailagay po on record, Mr. Chair. My bad. Ang legal department po namin ay nagkaroon na po ng consultation last August 10, and we will provide our good this honorable committee and our Senator Tolentino a copy of the suggestions and inputs coming from various federation PTAs, from COCOPEA, private school associations, student organizations, na nakonsulta na po DepEd supervisors, organization of our superintendents, of our school principals. Pero kukonsultahin po muli namin, Mr. Chair, I'm talking about the IRR on the school calendar law, yung ating pong grupo ng mga pamahalaang lokal, at pati po ang Senado at ang mababang kapulungan po ng ating Kongreso. So I just would like to make it very clear that we have already done that consultation, and we are in the process of finalizing the IRR in time for the period mentioned by our good Senator Tolentino. Pero bago po mangyari yon, i-engage po namin po ang mga senador po at ang various leagues. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much po.
Thank you, Yusek Omali. We recognize Director Cabral. Nandito ba ho siya? Yes, Willie. Go ahead. Go ahead, Willie. Naka-mute ka. Naka... Yan, naka-unmute ka na. But we cannot hear you, Willie. Hindi ka namin marinig. I think it's your earpiece. Hindi ka namin marinig pero naka-unmute ka na. Wala pa rin.
Baka pwede yung director muna from NCR.
Si Willie is the director from NCR.
Region 4A.
From Region 4A.
Region 4A. Sige po. Can we recognize...
Mr. Chair.
Who is the... yes.
This is RD Malcolm Garma of DepEd NCR, Mr. Chair.
Sige po. Yes, Director Garma. Go ahead.
Good morning po, Mr. Chair, and to all the senators in attendance. For NCR, Mr. Chair, we are actually preparing in the event that hopefully NCR will be under GCQ by August 19. So when we did the simulations in NCR, that was during the time that NCR was under GCQ. So nakapagpalabas naman po kami ng mga ilang guro who conducted the simulations. But now that we are under MECQ, Mr. Chair, talagang admittedly, medyo hirap po yung mobility namin because not only that we are only observing the skeleton workforce in our offices and schools, but of course we know that under MECQ, there is an absence of public transport. So though we have our skeleton workforces now in the offices and school, we still have to provide transportation or shuttle services for those who will report physically to work. So tama po yung sinabi niyo, Mr. Chair. The modules may be delivered or already ready in the respective divisions in NCR, but the next problem will be the distribution. So in the event, Mr. Chair, that NCR will maintain to be under MECQ after August 19, we are now coordinating with the respective LGUs for possibility of helping the schools to deliver the modules to the respective households or even to the community or through the barangay with the use of non-teaching personnel that we have in our communities or in our schools. So sa ngayon po, Mr. Chair, in the event na talagang magtuloy-tuloy po yung MECQ, we will admit that in NCR mahihirapan po kaming gumalaw. But we are trying and exploring everything with the help of our respective LGUs na ma-deliver po namin kahit po yung first hanggang second week of our modules. And we are also employing certain activities. We call this some bridging program activities na kung saan hindi naman module lang din yung gagamitin natin, but we will also be using some other forms or other platforms like the use of Facebook and other platforms available, with the use of smartphones and tablets or gadgets that are available for use ng ating mga guro at mga learners. So again, Mr. Chair, we are preparing for the opening of August 24 classes, but in the assumption also that NCR will be under GCQ after August 19. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And ang MECQ, then we trigger the new law, no? Itong RA 11480 as mentioned by Senator Tolentino. Dahil nga ang MECQ, ang ibig sabihin niyan, lumalala yung sitwasyon sa ating lugar. At lumalala yung sitwasyon sa iba't ibang barangay natin. I know for a fact some of the LGUs may mga naka-lockdown na sitio, naka-lockdown na barangay, naka-lockdown na community. So, in other words, hindi natin pwedeng pilitin yung mga guro natin, even non-teaching personnel, na mag-distribute sa isang lugar na lumalala. That is my recommendation because right now, the situation is quite uncertain. No? Hindi natin pwedeng nag-i-improve, hindi rin natin pwedeng sabihin lumalala, parang hindi rin mahirap sabihin. And that's why I'm recommending to postpone school opening in case MECQ will be continued in this area, namely NCR, Bulacan, Cavite, Laguna, and Rizal. No, dahil itong mga lugar hindi naman again, no, hindi nag-i-improve at napakahirap sabihin kung ano ang mangyayari.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
baka si RD Willie, just so we have a sense also of their adjustments. But on our part, your remarks and recommendations we will convey to the secretary. But I would like to seek your understanding that we are not in a position to speak for the secretary. I think on this matter, I think that under that law, it's a recommendation by the secretary to the president, and my understanding also is that there is a regular update presentation by the secretary to the president, and such might happen, but I am not privy to any set schedule between the secretary and the president right now. Mr. Chair.
Chair?
Yes, Senator Binay.
Pwede kay Director Garma lang for NCR.
Director Garma?
Kay Director Garma, ano ba more or less ang magiging mix for NCR? For NCR, mas marami tayong mga LGUs na financially capable or may mga estudyante tayo na mas may access to tablets, to smartphones, or even laptops. So for NCR, ano ba nakikita niyo mix? Kasi dun sa previous hearings, laging sinasabi ni Secretary Briones na it's up to the director to decide kung anong mix yung gagawin nila dun sa lugar nila.
Yes, Madam Senator, magandang umaga po. For NCR, you are right that there is a mix. We call this as modified blended learning. We use the printed modules as a default tool for our learning delivery. However, marami po tayo mga divisions or cities in NCR that will employ the use of digital or online platform with the use of gadgets or tablets that will be distributed as committed by the local government units. Kaya lang po, Madam Senator, yung pong mga commitment ng ating mga LGUs for the distribution of gadgets may be hampered a bit because of some procurement issues. Again, as affected by the MECQ, baka there will be some delays of the use of tablets or the delivery of tablets or gadgets in some parts of the metropolis. This is why, Madam Senator, despite of this commitment of our local government units, we still ask our divisions to prepare printed modules just to serve as the fallback or para po kung hindi man ho umabot yung ating mga gadgets for the first months or first month of the opening of classes, ay meron pa rin ho magagamit ang mga bata. But definitely for NCR, it will be probably around a 50-50 or 40-60 mix of printed modules and the use of digital or online platform. However, Madam Senator, for NCR, we are just looking at the use of printed modules, probably up to the first or second grading period, because we realize that the use of printed modules is really very expensive. It's not cost effective, and at meron po itong environment cost, no, dahil po papel ang gagamitin. So sa ngayon pa lang po naghahanap na ho kami ng pamamaraan para ho unti-unti ay mapalitan na namin yung aming ginagamit na platform for the blended learning modality. So sana po ay majority of our communities and cities and divisions will be now using the digital platform. And but hopefully alongside with this plan will be the improvement of infrastructure, like for example in terms of connectivity and more gadgets or more hardwares can be committed, no, by our local government units. So sa halip na po dun gumagasto sa printing, baka po ito na yung pwede nating mag-invest tayo dun sa mga hardwares na ito. So yun po ang sitwasyon na Madam Senator sa NCR.
Mr. Chair.
Yes. We recognize Director Cabral. Director Cabral.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Willie, go ahead.
Yeah.
Sige.
Yeah. All right. Well, kami po dito sa Region 4A, we have 3 provinces declared under MACQ and 2 provinces, Batangas and Quezon, under GCQ. But we do understand that the number of cases are increasing, even in those covered by GCQ. But there are also other measures that are implemented in those GCQ areas. So we look at the possibility, if there will be the lifting of MACQ and shifting to GCQ by August 19, we will use the window from August 19 to a week, August 24 in the first week, because the first week of the classes, the opening will be more on psychosocial assessment, and of course preparation of our learners. We will use that as our window for the distribution. Majority of our workers now in the department are in work from home arrangement. Now, what are the strategies that we look into? One, we do the neighborhood organization of classes and even the teaching assignment and loading of teachers, so that they are contained within the community where the school is located. We also, for the distribution, retrieval, and delivery of our SLMs, we look forward to outsourcing of the manpower for the distribution of SLMs within the area, and use that other distributor, and we will allocate some amount for from the MOE for these expenses. Part of which also is on the observance of protocols on end-to-end handling of SLMs, such that we will secure permit or pass from the LGU for unimpeded movement, whether these are volunteers or on-job orders, or those working R01 for the distribution. We will implement the safety measures and other health protocols, and of course we ensure that these SLMs are not damaged due to weather or improper handling. We do understand that there is an increasing number of active cases, but these are also, when you look at the uh, levels of communities within municipalities, and municipalities within the provinces, we can also see that there are, of course, the numbers get smaller. So we first identify high-risk areas within the locality, and we will ensure a one-time delivery given that window. And while we're saying that there is no the deferment of opening of classes on August 24, we will treat this as a sort of suspension, similar as what we do before pre-COVID period natin, that during opening of classes, when we are hit by typhoon, the classes opens in June, say for example, but we because of disasters, natural calamities, in some areas these are suspended, and therefore we consider that, and then we will make adjustment somehow along the way, given the prescribed period. But that is in the light of the situation that there has been no declaration from the president that it will be moved to a later date for that. Just the same, what I'm saying is we have done this preparation. Should August 24 is not not deferred, or opening of classes is not deferred, but we are ready given all of those measures and action steps that our superintendents are willing and planning to implement at the lowest level from the division to the school. Thank you very much po.
But Willie, what do you recommend if the ECQ will continue?
Well,
Kayo
for
on the ground eh.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Senator, if we will be given, say for example, if MECQ will be continued, and I agree that nobody can tell what will really happen after August 18. But if you, if the situation is worse by that time, it's still
ECQ will be extended. Obviously, the situation is not improving. So the situation is still the same and might be getting worse. That's why it's MECQ. So the recommendation is in those areas that MECQ will be continued, then i-postpone na lang muna natin yung school opening. That is what the spirit of the law is, or the new law is. Itong RA 11480 is to anticipate situations like this. Yun lang naman po yung sinasabi natin. And kay Yusek Malaluan, if I recommend also to talk to, when you talk to the good secretary, to already seek guidance from the president a few days earlier, maybe 2 days earlier, maybe 3 days earlier, para makaplan po on the ground. No? Because kung magde-decide ho tayo last day, napakahirap po gumalaw kasi kung magde-decide ho na ida-downgrade sa GCQ, from August 19 to 24, we're talking about only 5 days for the divisions to move. No? So, ang recommendation ko rin is to talk to the president early on, so to seek guidance para alam ng mga divisions kung anong gagawin.
Chair?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
may I respond just quickly?
Yes, Yusek Maluluan.
Yes, Mr. Chair, ang alam ko ay kaya hindi lamang natuloy yung pag-uusap ni Secretary Briones at ng Pangulo ay nasa Davao si Pangulo nitong nakaraang linggo at hindi kasama si Secretary dun sa mga kalihim na nagtungo sa Davao for a meeting with the President. But as far as I know, as I mentioned, even in the last meeting ay nabanggit that was televised, the televised portion ay nabanggit na magkakaroon pa sila ng isang pagpupulong ng Pangulo. And I am sure that the Secretary is well aware of the law, and I'm just not at liberty, unfortunately, to I mean, in the context of the deliberative process between the Secretary and the President, I would not like to preempt the secretary, I mean, for that meeting, with apologies to the committee, Mr. Chair.
Senator Binay, you're recognized.
Chair, can we just get inputs from the private schools? Dun sa pinag-uusapan yung how ready yung lugar na because I think may mga private schools na tayo na nag-uumpisa na ata. Commute ka.
With that question, I would like to recognize Attorney Erap to give us a update on the activities of the private school and also the situation of the private school. No? Taking note that doon sa presentation ni Yusek Malaluan that only 30% of the intended enrollees enrolled in the private school. So just give us a update on the situation of the private schools.
Yeah. Thank you, Senator Binay and Senator Gatchalian. Our Philippine education system is composed of two sectors po, the public and the private. So I hope when we say learning continues, we also include the students in the private sector. And it is unfortunate that based on the data presented, 95% of the enrollment in the public school system so far has been recorded, but only 36% of the enrollment in the private schools. And actually, yung pong 95% sa public schools, hindi yun entirely accurate dahil po dun sa 400,000 na lumipat na from the private to the public. No, so kung ito ay around 10% po yan ng 4 million of the total students. So if we add that, edi dapat sana nag-increase na yung enrollment sa public schools. No? So it's unfortunate. Mukhang hindi na po tataas yung ating enrollment data sa private schools. Nung mga una pong hearings po natin, ang sabi ko worst case is 50%, pero mukhang ngayon malabo pa namin maabot yung 50%. Now, senators and the committee, it gives us different scenarios po of this data. Sa sector po namin, meron kami mga small private schools at meron din naman po na malalaking private basic education schools kasi kasama po yung college and other programs. Now, ang effect po nito nung low enrollment is this. Marami po kaming mga private schools who are ready, well-equipped. Ito po sa technology yan dahil even before the pandemic, meron na po silang online learning. But unfortunately, because of the lack or very low enrollment, all of these technologies will be underutilized. Not, of course, mentioning yung ating well-trained faculty to handle this. So it is unfortunate na mga faculty or teachers with MA degrees, well-trained on these different modalities will be underutilized simply because of lack of enrollment. And then that's why we are actually looking at, we're trying to explore po, Senator, on how these resources in the private schools would also be used or utilized to improve po yung ating enrollment and to accommodate yung mga hindi po makapag-enroll this coming school year and also addressing the different modalities. Gusto po sana namin itanong, like for example, saan po ba yung mga regions in the public schools ang gagamit ng online? Because I heard in some forums po na yung NCR, for example, will not be using online agad. They will still explore whether it is possible. So ang gusto po namin sana sabihin, in complementarity, baka naman po dun sa mga areas na hindi po kaya ng DepEd na gawing online, i-contract out po sa mga private schools. Because as already mentioned in the previous discussion, I think when we talk about health protocols, mas preferred pa rin yung online. Kasi yung modular, hindi naman po yan absolutely zero contact or mobility. Kanina po nabanggit yung mga teachers na mag-door to door, house to house, at pati po yung mga students, I'm sure, in picking up the materials, trying to print, etc. will also involve some physical contact. Yung mga ibang areas po, pinag-uusapan din how to disinfect the materials being passed around. So ang gusto lang po sana namin, if possible, baka po pwedeng magkaroon po ng a sort of like a voucher, limited per school year muna kasi marami po talaga
That compost readiness component. Can you flash that?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, while that is being flashed, may I just if I may seek permission, just to
Yes,
have
go
a
ahead.
remark on precisely the enrollment is a factor for while they are ready to deliver, but the enrollment in the private school has been affected for a number of reasons on the part of their enrollees. And I think it is that aspect that the public sector is trying to catch with respect to the learning delivery that is not purely online. Because even in Metro Manila, that's the result of the survey form that we had, that even in the most urbanized areas, if we take into consideration the condition of the households and the learners, ay kung pure online ay hindi sila makaka-participate in such delivery. And that's why the modular unfortunately will also still entail physical but not with the learners themselves, and in a less a contact intensity manner. We have to make that adoption because otherwise if we will go pure online ay hindi magiging accessible po yung ating learning delivery modalities. Mr. Chair, this is the 9
Yeah.
areas.
Just to pursue that thought, Yusek, kay Attorney Erap, in the Bayanihan 2 as approved by the Senate, no, meron 17 billion for unemployment or involuntary separation assistance for displaced workers or employees for private, basic, and higher education institutions and part-time faculty in state universities and colleges. So this is a insertion or a provision that the Senate approved. We recognize the displacement and also the unemployment in the private education sector. So meron malaking funds doon that we can tap, and we ask the guidance of the private schools to take a look at that provision para pag ginawa in IRR ay makapture kaagad yung mga private schools doon.
Yes, thank you po, Senator. Yeah, we are aware of that. Meron po doon expansion ng mga subsidies under GASPE and also the TES for tertiary ed. But yun po ang we just would like to focus since we're talking about the capabilities in the delivery of the program. Yeah, yung po sinabi ni Yusek Nepo, totoo po yun. Yung enrollment release, yung low enrollment is really based on the financial capabilities of the parents. Pero I think kasi ang focus ko po is kanina DepEd's own limitations in the delivery of program. Kasi majority po, I think just focusing on the capabilities lang po ng DepEd, not on the capabilities of the students. It is parang leaning towards modular and not really online. Parang hindi po masyadong nababanggit. Ay gusto ko lang pong i-present na sa private sector naman po, if we're talking about online, ready po doon. No? Kasi even before the pandemic, may mga learning platforms na it's already being implemented. So nakakapanghinayang lang po kung hindi po ito talaga ma-maximize ng gamit. Kung we're just volunteering also if there's a government scheme where the students may be allowed to experience that level or a level of education experience, we're opening also and also to help our schools also cope with the pandemic.
Attorney Erap, paki-submit sa amin those underutilized schools, no? Where they are and the specific schools. That is a very good idea na gamitin natin in underutilization ng mga schools. Nandiyan na eh. No? And in the Bayanihan law na mention ko kanina, may fund demand. So we can probably channel some of those funds into a voucher system para magamit natin yung underutilization ng school. So will help you bridge with DepEd para magamit natin. Ang idea lang naman namin magamit yun eh, no? Kung nandiyan na sila, then gamitin na natin.
Yes po, Mr. Chair. Chair, gusto ko pong i-manifest po yung tungkol sa yung sa IRR ng RA 11480. Just want to manifest na last August 10 nagkaroon po ng consultation and I was there.
Okay. All right. I think si Yusek Umali was not updated on that. No. Yes, Senator Nancy.
Like, kasi parang based dun sa statement ni Director Garma, parang even ang NCR is not ready for an online modality eh. Kasi parang dun sa nabanggit niya, mukhang printed yung gagamitin at least for the first semester. Pwede pang malaman kay, I don't know kung kay Yusek Nepo, nagkaroon na ba tayo ng pilot for online? Siguro, just to share, Mr. Chair, kasi yung, like the other day, nagkaroon kami ng orientation para dun sa eskwelahan ng mga anak ko, kung saan tinuro na nung school, as a parent, ano yung responsibility mo. In fact, yung gagamitin naming platform, which is I think Google Classroom, meron dong na yung parent pwede maglalog, meron siyang another ano ba tawag doon? I'm not a techie person. Basta may app na kung saan as a parent, monitor mo yung ginagawang trabaho ng mga anak mo. Kasi I think yung kunyari may mga submission sila, pwedeng i-upload ng school dun sa app na yon. I wonder kung yung DepEd, may na-setup na ba kayong ganito?
With the permission of the chair, yes, meron po kaming kasama ng mga simulations ng online. Ang siguro ang kaibahan lamang dun sa private schools ay meron silang setup na pure online at dito po sa Department of Education, it will still be a blending of those various modalities. But meron naman pong mga simulation kami and actually I think among those that would have simulated are NCR and other. I've seen the simulations in other areas, Madam Senator. But ang hindi ko kayo masagot ay kung meron kaming setup na talagang 100% online modality. But it is a blending with itong ang modules, but and as mentioned by RD Garma, it will take them some time kasi hindi naman po lang dun sa capacity namin to deliver, but kung may gadget kagaya nung isang sinabi ni RD ay may constraint din sila na lahat ba ng mga estudyante ay may gadget sa bahay, may connectivity sa bahay. Educational institution dun sa aming joint TVL program nga na isang component din ng GASPE. So kung may ganun pong window o pagkakataon where we can pull together students that are ready for online pure online classes dahil may connectivity sila, may gadget sila at may kayang paaralan na mag-offer nun, then I think we can structure that if the resources and accounting procedures will allow. Madam Senator and Mr. Chair.
So, Yusek Nepo, parang lumalabas for this, well, at least for this first semester, wala talagang, kasi sa private school may kind of face-to-face scenario through that online platform na kung saan si teacher, makikita mo dun sa screen, tapos pinapaliwanag niya yung konsepto. Tapos si estudyante, yung mga estudyante, meron silang mekanismo din na kung saan pwede silang sumagot. At di ba may ganong interaction? So sa public school, parang walang ganong interaction na mangyayari.
Mr. Chair, Madam Senator, mayroon po pero hindi exclusively that form kasi nga po sa aming survey form hindi lang po sa aspeto ng may kakayahan ba kaming mag-provide noon pero may kakayahan ba yung household na mag-access at sa isang klase po ay laging may yes.
Parang that's the only available form because yung a face-to-face is not possible. So paano magkakaroon ng action si teacher dun sa estudyante para ipaliwanag yung mga konsepto. Kung wala ganung
Kagaya po nung pinakitang simulation halimbawa sa Navotas, ay minsan kasi ay walang capacity yung household for a video conferencing na mas malaki ang bandwidth connected dapat for a certain period of time. Pero meron naman po silang communication like messenger. So mas limited form of interaction because of the limitation of the uh, of of the capacity of the learners. Kaya po nabanggit din ni Director Malcolm yung halimbawa kung ma-delay yung pag-make available ng gadgets. Kasi yung pong sinasabi nyo, maaring mangyari yon pero hindi po lahat ng kumbaga isang klase o isang section of 27 to 30 learners or to 40 can participate in that because the limitation can be on the part of the student and the household itself. Uh, uh, Ibig sabihin, limited communication platforms lang po ang meron sila dahil sa financial resource nila or gadget limitation. So, ang nakita ko po ay, alimbawa, yung iba ay talagang texting, yung calls na yung only calls ay pwede pero hindi wala silang capacity to have an interactive a platform like we are doing now na makalagin sila into a class like this. So yun po yung limitation. In fact, I think that is also the limitation why some of the private schools, even if they are ready to offer, because of the limitations of the households, hindi naman sila maka-enroll dahil yung ino-offer is exclusively online. At hindi po namin kayang isubsidize yun lahat at the household level yung ganong capacity of the households. Kaya we appreciate, for example, yung ating mga LGUs in Metro Manila that have committed, for example, to provide tablets. So that allows us the opportunity to have such a gadget na isang buong klase ay may tablet at ang problema na lang ay yung connectivity. So kung kami po ay magkaroon ng learning management system which is being developed for example by our ICTS na zero rated, so may gadget na sila at may access sila to connectivity na hindi sila nag-incur ng data charges, then that may be feasible as you are saying now, Madam Chair, na may talagang regular yung online delivery modality nung klase na yon. I have to ask sina RD Malcolm kung meron sila na gano'n at mga klase na kasi alam nila po yung contextualization nila kung may mga klase sila in Metro Manila that have been able to, sabi nila kanina 50-50, kung meron ba doon na pure online na delivery modality. It's usually, Madam Senator, the limitation of the learner and the households kasi hindi lahat ng households ay have a capacity to participate in such a modality based on our learner enrollment survey that we have. So may iiwan po kung yun ang aming ipapatupad. May mga estudyante na hindi makaka-participate. So that is why probably it can be done with a certain members of the class. Dun sa hindi kaya mag-participate, talagang modular pa rin po sila.
Teacher.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's go back to that slide in readiness component. I just want to there are 9 blocks ito. There are 9 blocks of the readiness component, USEC. These are the blocks that we need to fulfill in order to be ready by August 24. USEC, sa tingin ko may kulang tayo isa dito eh. Ang kulang dito ay yung teacher and non-teaching staff welfare. In this presentation, wala akong nakitang that anything that deals with teaching and non-teaching staff's welfare. And in your press con on Monday, and let me just quote, no, there was a question na binato kay Yusek Ancevilla, and let me just read the quote. Ang tanong niya, in cases where teachers get COVID-19, who will pay for the testing? Ang sagot ni Yusek Sevilla, the 2020 budget does not have allocation for testing and hospitalization, but there's collaboration with the Department of Health and LGUs to shoulder the cost of testing and hospitalization. And then she goes, DepEd has a pool of contributions from its employees to help teachers, staff, and personnel who get infected with COVID. From what I gathered here, Yusek, is there's uncertainty in terms of how do we test teachers and how do we address their needs if they get infected. Ang punto ko dito, Yusek, is itong SLM natin, we will need the cooperation and the support of all 800,000 teachers. Sama na natin in non-teaching about 900,000 teachers, 900,000 teaching and non-teaching personnel. And para maging effective itong self-learning module, itong distance learning, we need to make sure that our teachers and non-teaching personnel will give their full cooperation and their full enthusiasm in terms of executing this distance learning. Pero paano natin aasahan yung kanilang full cooperation kung takot sila? Kung alam nila na wala silang pupuntahan kung sila ay kung sila ay naging positive, kung sila ay may symptoms, kung sila ay lumala yung sakit nila, paano natin mahihikayat sila na tumulong i-operationalize itong distance learning natin kung alam nila na wala silang pupuntahan? And this is my concern because the teachers is an essential part of the success of this learning continuity plan. Without their confidence, no, all of this will fail. And kaya ako nababahala, to be honest, Yusek, because in your readiness, we failed to look at the plight of our teachers and our non-teaching staff. And that is consistent with the answer during the press con. In fact, natanong ka nga kung ilan yung nag-COVID positive, but you didn't give an answer at that time, no? Despite there is a task force that monitors all of this. So my point is, we need to make sure that the welfare of our teachers and non-teaching staff is well taken care of. Kung hindi man sa inyong sa budget, may mga ibang mekanismo naman. For example, PhilHealth. No, lahat naman tayo bilang government employee, may PhilHealth tayo. Meron din tayong GSIS, no, na pwede tayong mag-take up ng loan or mag-take up ng whatever grant. But of course, the department needs to make sure that this is operationalized. Ngayon, Yusek, my question is, as of this point, what are we doing? What is the department doing to make sure that the plight of the teachers are well secured, no? Not only addressed, but secured as of this point. Na kung mayroon pong mangyari sa kanila, kung kakailangan nila yung testing nila, at kung lumabas na sila at nahawaan sila, meron na silang pupuntahan at kukunan. We need to assure them Hindi lang yung just open-ended na may contribution. Assurance is very important in this case because without assurance, you don't have confidence. And without confidence, all of this will fail.
Mr. Chair, and I would, with respect to the financial aspect, we will request Undersecretary Sevilla to provide the answer. But with respect to how we see the teacher and non-teaching staff welfare from the health perspective, kasama po naman yan doon sa aming number 8. Malawak po yung health standards na yan, hindi lang po yan protocols, kung hindi yung support that we give. So dalawa pong components itong health standards na ito, and it in fact it covers also the students if should we allow face-to-face at some point in the future. But that health standards is paired with the alternative work arrangements that we have. At doon nabanggit ko na mayroon namang kasama doon na testing protocol. Ang tingin ko na hindi malinaw talaga at nakita ko rin yung tugon ni Undersecretary Sevilla is the hospitalization component. Right now, nabanggit nyo yung aming monitoring. We have been able to work with our internal support mechanisms, whether on within budget or off budget mechanism as a DepEd family. Pero yung baka ang mas makakasagot Mr. Chair ay si Undersecretary Sevilla with respect to the hospitalization. So talagang PhilHealth ngayon ang component dyan, pero wala kaming my understanding is a subsidy for the hospitalization itself. Pero yung pong testing ay malinaw doon na kung related to yung deployment of a teaching or non-teaching staff for na pumapasok sa mga na deploy na may physical, whether in an intermittent basis, ay nakalagay po doon that we will facilitate the testing of the teacher. And when we say facilitate, it is either we can spend for it or through partnerships be able to secure the testing of the personnel. We committed to the media persons, Mr. Chair, and we will submit also to this committee an update on our monitoring of our COVID cases. As I mentioned, ang nakalagay lang kasi po doon, and which we have to clarify with the task force, ay cumulative po. We have figures for active cases at saka yung mga probable cases, but we just want to be very sure before we put this information out, Mr. Chair. But we will submit also to this committee the latest update on the COVID situation within the DepEd family.
Yusek, but ilan na po ang within your DepEd system, ilan na po ba ang na-infect with COVID?
Ang cumulative figure po na meron which is subject to further validation in the sense of from a management perspective and the task force ay ang cumulative po ay 598 from the field reports and 11 from CO reports, and this is a combination of personnel, teaching and non-teaching, and learners as well.
Itong 598, Yusek, sino po ang nagbayad nung kanilang testing and then yung aftercare?
Hindi ko po kayo masasagot. I do not have that information right now. Dito po sa 11 malamang kasama dito si Secretary Briones, for example, who tested positive, and she was swabbed by the Department of Health, for example, at that time. So hindi dun po sa mga na-expose kay Secretary ay may ibang nagka-symptoms na test, pero hindi ko po kayo masagot kung saan ang galing yung actual funding. I know that there has also been some that nitong huli itong MECQ at nag-positive na we committed reimbursement. But in the field, hindi ko po masagot kayo dun sa lahat ng cases na ito, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Yes, Yusek, I just want to put emphasis, gusto ko idiin rin na we really need to take care of our people, in your case, your constituents, aside from the parents and children, are the teachers. And they're the most important component to the success of this LCP. At alam ko yung mga teachers natin, kagaya natin, natatakot rin sila lumabas eh. Alam nila pag lumalabas sila, delikado yung kanilang buhay. Alam nila pag nagkaka-interact sila, delikado yung kanilang buhay. So without any security as to testing, as to aftercare, mahirap po talagang parang hindi buo yung kanilang loob para lumabas at gawin yung kanilang dapat gawin. At I think what the department needs to assure is their plight, no, their welfare, and not only assurance but secure talaga na kung may mangyari sa kanila, meron silang pupuntahan. I would like to
Mr.
recognize
Chair?
Yusek Sevilla. Yeah, Yusek
Yes.
Sevilla. Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Kasi I would also like to contextualize my response to the media because the question raised during the press con is very specific. The question was, is there a budget cover or will there be financial assistance given to our personnel who will be found positive? And the question was also specific to treatment and hospitalization, not testing. So let me explain, Mr. Chair, our stand on this. And we need the lawmakers to support us on this. The budget law does not include any budget item for treatment and hospitalization, I think in all government agencies, not just DepEd. It is only DOH who has the authority to use their budget for medical treatment and hospitalization. So even if we want to even pay for their treatment and hospitalization, the result will be a COA finding to our department because there is no budget item that will authorize us to do that. What we have right now in our budget, and we have realigned actually some of our regular programs, is the supplies and support mechanism to implement our minimum health standards. It is in number 8, and Yusek Nepo is right in saying that this is not only for teaching position, but this covers all teaching, non-teaching, teaching-related, and all administrative staff as well. So meron po kami Department Order number 14, and this is an issuance, a guidelines for the health standards to be implemented, not just in the offices, but also in the schools. And imagine how many schools we have right now, Mr. Chair. And we have allowed the use of MOE to buy for the prevention, disinfection, decontamination. And the testing actually is also included, Mr. Chair. But if we will have all the testing expenses of all the personnel and the learners, ay talaga pong magkukulang ang budget ng DepEd dito. Kaya ang nangyari, we are following the protocol of the Department of Health in terms of testing, like for example, the eligibility or the qualification before you will undergo rapid testing and the swab testing. The rapid testing as well, we coordinated with the Commission and Audit, and they said that we really have to seek a legal basis for us to use our funds on this. So it will be very helpful, Mr. Chair, if the legislators will also give us the authority. And of course, if there's a legal basis, we also need the funding cover. And we have talked to DBM about this, and I think the limitation is one, legal basis. Second is the availability of fund. But rest assured that all government employees, including DepEd, is covered under the PhilHealth insurance. And anything that will happen to them will be covered by this PhilHealth coverage. And our employee welfare and the finance strand will be giving the information and the protocol and procedures. In fact, dun po sa mga cases na sinabi ni Yusek Nepo, ay namomonitor po namin at nabibigyan ng assistance ang ating mga empleyado, including the learners, as Yusek Nepo said. Yung pong monitoring natin, I think, is really off budget, out of the personal care and effort of the department. And I think malaki rin po ang tulong ng local government units. And Senator Win, you really know this. Kahit po kami ay mga taga-DepEd, sasagutin ng local government pag alam nyo na meron pong kaso na estudyante, lalo na po kung teacher. So this is in cooperation with DOH, the local government unit, and the PhilHealth. But
Yeah.
if there's a need to also provide under the DepEd budget, for example, financial assistance and medication or treatment, then it has to be authorized by a law.
Yeah,
Thank
but
you po.
Yusek, you're absolutely correct, no? All of us being government employees, meron tayong PhilHealth eh. Automatic na yan eh. Meron rin tayong GSIS, automatic na yan. But have you networked with PhilHealth to give special attention to our teachers, to our non-teaching personnel, considering that they will be executing a relatively risky learning continuity plan? My point of the matter here is they will be going out now eh. Or pupuntahan sila ng magulang. No? Either way, may interaction. Ang punto ko lang naman is, have we exerted extra effort to secure their health needs and their aftercare needs? Granted, wala tayong budget sa 2020, but there are other ways, no? Like PhilHealth nga. So have you networked with PhilHealth and make sure that our teachers get some form of security?
Yes, Mr. Chair, our Bureau of Health, Bureau of Human Resource, and Employee Welfare are now, there's an ongoing negotiation with PhilHealth on this. And ang ginagawa rin po namin talaga, Mr. Chair, is yung localized. Kasi it cannot be reported to the central office or the regional office. It has to happen really where the case is. At yung pong PhilHealth is really working on this as well. So we will have the communication and the information as soon as nagawa na po natin or na-finalize na natin yung partnership with PhilHealth on this.
It's just gusto ko lang for example, if I'm a teacher and in my duty of executing the learning continuity plan, nahawaan ako. Hindi natin maalis yan eh. No, may mga storya nga, pumunta lang sa mall, nahawaan na. So assuming nahawaan siya, ano yung gagawin niya? Saan siya pwedeng kumuha ng tulong para magpa-test? Of course, bumili ng gamot, and then of course, may aftercare pa yan kung lumala yung sagot niya. So, yung sakit niya. So, ano yung gagawin ng isang guro para ma-access itong lahat?
Mr. Chair, it is in the Department Order number 14, all the procedures and protocols. So we have a COVID task force down to school level. So the teacher will have to report to our task force in the school. At meron pong coordinator dyan, ibabato po kaagad yan sa division office. The division office will coordinate with DOH and the local government unit. At yun nga pong nangyayari, yung pong testing na binibigay sa ating mga naging cases, ay courtesy of the DOH or LGU. Kaya yung tanong niyo po kanina, sinong gumagastos, most of them were accommodated by our LGU. But of course, some of the employees opted to do their own, lalo na po yung kaya naman, nagmamadali rin. Halimbawa, there are cases na emergency talaga. The question is, when they go to finance and they want to reimburse, and when we ask COA if we are allowed to reimburse, we were given a question that we need a legal basis to do that.
Mm-mm. I think right now the fastest way is to tap PhilHealth and to tap GSIS for other needs. No, ito talaga yung mga insurance and safety nets na built-in sa atin bilang isang government employee. And ang ano ko lang naman is, I know PhilHealth now. Nababasa niyo. I'm sure they have their hands full in answering anomalies. Kailangan talaga extra effort to make sure that mabigyan sila kaagad ng reimbursement, mabigyan kaagad sila ng tulong. Dahil alam ko yung PhilHealth rin matagal kung hindi kayo magkakaroon ng extra effort to link up with them. Ito lang ako, nababahala lang ako kasi lalabas na yung mga teacher natin eh. And kausap ko yung mga ibang teacher natin dito sa Valenzuela, natatakot talaga sila. And the only way na pwede nating himasin yung kanilang takot, i-assure natin, i-secure natin yung kanilang protection. Yun ang aking punto. And that's why I'm very compelled nga, to be honest about it, I'm very compelled to recommend to postpone class opening if we don't address the welfare of our teachers and non-teaching staff, because they're as important as all of these things that we are talking about, no? If you don't secure their health condition, if you don't secure their aftercare condition, might as well postpone class opening dahil malalagay talaga sila sa delikado. So just to move forward, Yusek Ann, I would
Mr.
like to
Chair?
ask... Yes, Yusek.
Just a manifestation, a quick manifestation that habang naandito pa po itong readiness components, that yung number 8, because even if I say it is subsumed there, I think it must be expressly stated as you observed, that number 8 should not be as in other words, might have a limited sense of health standards, but really make it express here that it also includes teacher and non-teaching staff welfare, so that it is clear that it is covered, and that also allows us to really specifically address that in our briefings, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Yes.
Just a manifestation.
Before I continue, let me recognize the presence of Senator Cayetano, who's here with us. Good morning, ma'am. Just to move on to this topic, Yusek Ann, request ko lang to submit to us a position paper on securing the health concern, securing the aftercare, securing the welfare of our teachers and non-teaching staff. Just submit to us a position paper. Kung meron na kayong networking with PhilHealth and TSIS, just elaborate on that. Ang gusto lang naman natin mapakita, I'm sure from DepEd and from us, is we have secured the welfare of their teachers insofar as health, insofar as learning continuity plan. So,
Yes,
mas
Mr.
kampante
Chair.
sila ngayon lumabas at gawin itong pinapagawa natin sa kanila. No? Just to
We do
move
agree,
forward
Mr.
on this
Chair.
topic. All right.
Opo, we will submit.
Yes. Senator
Mr.
Cayetano?
Yes,
Yes,
on that
sir.
topic, no, just a very quick response, no, it's directed to Yusek Ann, and also for more clarification on the questions you posed. You asked about what kind of support is available out there. You mentioned also tapping into PhilHealth. May I just inform you, Yusek Ann, that when you mentioned that as far as you know, it's only DOH that has authority to use their funds, no, to for testing or to take care for medical care of their staff. You mentioned rapid tests specifically. So I just want to spread it into the record, Mr. Chair, that rapid tests are not being endorsed. I think all of us are aware that the Alliance of Various Associations of Health Workers signed that letter, requesting that mag-ECQ, right? And of 7 recommendations, around 2 of them referred to their very strong concern on the use of rapid tests. So since napakalaki ng population ng ating teachers, I just wanted to be sure that the DepEd decision makers are aware of that. In as much as it's very accessible, the price is very reasonable, the health experts are not recommending it, and as far as I know, national government is not allowed to use public funds to purchase it. So in your request that your call to the legislators to support, of course we support. No, I know the chair will make that call as well. But just to clarify that issue po yung rapid test, no? Let's be clear about it kasi baka tayo mapuntain because you specifically mentioned it. I'm just clarifying that as far as I know, rapid test cannot be cannot be purchased with public funds. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification,
Mr.
Senator Pia. Yes, go ahead, Yusek Ann.
Yes. Thank you very much, Honorable Senator Pia Cayetano, for that. Kasi that I think is the explanation why there's a high demand for DepEd to do it. And we really are constrained because of that finding. You are aware, Senator, kaya nga po yung mga demand ng mga teachers on that, we have been explaining the limitation of the department. However, what I was requesting earlier, Senator, is that medical treatment and hospitalization as well is not authorized in our budget. So, rin po yun sa mga concern na I think should also be addressed.
I have no issue naman on that, but I just know that syempre lahat kaming legislators were very sensitive dun sa needs nyo, di ba? So baka mag-craft kami ng policy tas masama yung rapid test kasi yun yung question. But I'm glad you clarified that because I've also asked this Alliance of Health Workers, so itong mga specialists natin, to make that statement para maintindihan din ng tao kung bakit hindi nyo pwedeng gawin. And that's exactly what you said. Now, the demand is there. And baka akala lang nila ayaw nyo. And not only do you not have the authority to use funds in general, but even if you are granted the authority, I doubt if it will include rapid tests kasi nga it's not authorized. Yun lang. Thank you. I'm glad you asked that clarification. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Pia. In fact, Senator Pia, you know this better than I do. In Bayanihan too, we already specified spending for PCR test. Dati nung
Yes.
sa Bayanihan 1 kasi is generic testing lang eh.
Oo, kasi, and I mean, as we all know naman, we're all learning from this, di ba? As early as Bayanihan 1, let me just spread into the record, the same Health Alliance group were already strongly advising that we should not be dependent on rapid tests. But at that time, we will recall, Mr. Chair, di ba? Rapid test yung available eh, di ba? So, syempre, we seem to be constrained to respond in some way and to make testing available. But their position has never changed, no? Yun pa rin up to now. And now that our PCR tests are much more efficient, much more easily available, the more na they are pushing na dyan na lang tayo mag-focus. And I believe there are other tests coming out na better pa rin ng rapid. So, whatever recommendations we make, Mr. Chair, let's just put the wording should be general enough na as authorized by DOH or as prescribed by our health professionals. Something like that, no? Para lang walang maitip. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Pia, for clarifying that. Senator Pia, any questions on the update of DepEd? We're moving to the second part, which is to discuss the laws of the other senators. But before we move on to the second part,
I was just listening naman, so I don't naman have any specific questions. Your questions, Senator Nancy's questions, Senator Tol's questions are similar to mine. So okay na po ako. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator Pia. With that, we move on to the second portion of our agenda, and this is to discuss the several laws that I mentioned earlier, specifically the law that Senator Angara filed, Senator Tolentino, Senator Lapid, Senator Revilla, and yours truly. And this pertains to disaster preparedness and also inclusion of disaster preparedness and mitigation in the curriculum. So I would just like to ask DepEd for their comment on all of these laws. All of these laws are one way or the other similar to each other. So I would just like to ask for an omnibus comment on the laws that I mentioned. And Yusek Omali, you might want to comment on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. May we ask our USEC dads, please, to...
Yes, Yusek dads, you're recognized.
Good morning po. Good noon, Senator Win. Good noon po to everyone. The Department of Education po fully supports the proposed bills that will make sure that the concepts being proposed will be part of the curriculum. Be it also known that the concepts are integrated in our existing curriculum. So making this more permanent through the laws would really allow us to make sure that the concepts will be in our curriculum formally. Thank you.
Yusek, let me just I just want to point out the proposal of Senator Angara. Ang kanyang proposal, inclusion of pandemics, epidemics, and other public health crises as part of the curriculum. And then the other one, his proposal is requiring the teaching of disaster awareness, disaster mitigation as part of the curriculum. So both will touch on the curriculum, no? And the other proposals are more or less similar, no? So what's your comment on that, no? Because I know that decongesting the curriculum. No, I think we all agree that the curriculum has become congested over the years, and in fact, the reduction of your competencies is a signal that DepEd is in fact decongesting. So, what's your comment on these two proposals?
There's always a way to integrate the concepts, Honorable Senator Win. So we will continue to integrate those concepts, even as we are doing the integration of concepts related to disaster preparedness.
Right now, I understand na meron kayong some form of disaster preparedness in senior high school.
Yes po.
Is this proposal of Senator Angara different or similar to your what you are doing right now?
It actually reinforces or supports the things we're doing now.
Okay. And then going on to disaster preparedness, no, I would like to ask the head of the disaster preparedness task force to present to us the efforts of DepEd when it comes to disaster preparedness and learning continuity. No, I know for a fact that the disaster preparedness, most of the literature I read coming from DepEd focuses on the physical aspect of disaster preparedness. No, the learning continuity is not as pronounced. So maybe request from the head of your disaster preparedness to present the efforts of DepEd insofar as disaster preparedness is concerned.
Thank you, Senator Win. I think it's Director Ronnie.
Yes.
Sige po. Thank you po.
We recognize Director Ronnie.
Hello, good morning po.
Yes, Director, go ahead.
Yes po, good morning, Honorable Senator. Yun pong sa disaster preparedness, una po, in fact, meron pong integration na sa curriculum. We have mapped out, in fact, what subject areas is DRR, climate change, and even peace education integrated in the curriculum. We have the mapping of that po. Very recently in February, we were trying to actually, kumbaga, adjust, make it more prominent, concise. So a working group between the DRRMS and the Bureau of Curriculum Development. We did a workshop at Simeo Inotec po. We can give you what we have done in that regard. And the thing not to do is actually to further enhance this via looking at the MELCs, kasi hindi pa po yung MELCs ang tinignan noon, kundi yung K-12 talaga. So there is currently in those subject areas, yung climate change, DRR, and peace education and integration in the current curriculum. Let me make that clear po in various areas and in various grade levels. The second thing po is, you're right, Senator, yung disaster preparedness is very much part of various subjects. Kasama din po yung sa Aralin Panlipunan, buong isang content po on climate change. Yun pong mga what to do before, during, and after a hazard, kasama po yun. Makikita nyo sa MAPE, very pati first aid po, kasama po yun. Very comprehensive po yun doon sa mga subjects na yun. And there is, you pointed it right, in the junior senior high school, a course actually on disaster readiness na course po. So meron po ang DepEd, medyo matagal na rin po, ilang taon na. We can present that, provide you po the necessary documents to point out where integration is actually or has been happening. So, and then may mga co-curricular activities po tayo, halimbawa ang risk assessment. Every June po, pagpasukan, reiterate natin ang ating, through a memo, yung ating department order pertaining to the student-led watching and hazard mapping. Kasi yun po ay nagiging bahagi ng planning ng school through the school DRRM coordinator, either headed by the school principal or school head or a designated teacher doon po sa mga planning ng mga activities na ginagawa ng mga bata. Marami po sa ating mga schools ay may tinatawag na DRR camp or camping every year na ginagawa. May mga schools din na may tinatawag na Batang Emergency Response Team. Iba-iba po ang forma. And meron po tayo every year. And we can also provide the data ng schools natin every year ang sumasali sa nationwide simultaneous earthquake drill na isinasagawa ng NDRIMC, hindi lang para sa mga ahensya, pero tayo sa DepEd ay sinasama natin ang buong mga paaralan natin nationwide. And meron din pong mga contingency planning sa school level kasi may pondo po kaming binababa yung DRRMS sa ating mga divisions to conduct contingency planning. In addition, we have funds actually that train for school DRRM coordinators. Ina-extend pa lang po namin nitong mga nakaraang 2 taon na hindi na lang yung school DRRM coordinator. Siyempre facing po dahil din sa concerns ng funds. Meron po kaming modules, 23 modules, kung tama pa yung alala ko, na ginawa namin since 2016 at yun ang ginagamit na modules na pang-train dito sa mga ating mga empleyado. Ito po ay ginawa with the members of the education cluster, UNICEF, Save the Children, at iba pa po kasama ang Red Cross. In fact, sa module na to, yung pong first aid ay module ng PRC, ng Philippine Red Cross. Hindi po namin binago yon, pero pina-adapt nila yon as is. At sila din po ang mga resource persons natin. So lahat po ng kurso ay iba-ibang partners po. May pool of partners din po kami, both for preparedness, response, at doon sa ginagawa nating psychosocial services, may pool of resource persons po tayo na namomobilize natin every year. And on a quarterly basis, we actually have a systematic regular planning with all the partners po para sa programa ng DRRM, climate change, at saka peace education. So yun po. So I think ang tingin ko po, but we will provide, as you said so, Senator, comments, omnibus comments on the various bills that have been drafted by the Senate. But gusto ko lang din pong i-emphasize that many have actually been working po because since 2010, noong inilabas ng government yung NDRIM Act of 2010, halos lahat ng ahensya na membro ng NDRIMC ay meron pong DRRM na mga opisina. Yun po ang pinagmulan ng aming opisina sa batas na yon. Yun po ang kanyang legal basis. At mula noon, ay na-integrate po sa planning and budgeting. Kaya may budget kami, though limited, as I have earlier told you way back, kung matulungan din kami doon. Though limited, ay umaandar po. One of the greatest challenge that we recognize in the department in terms of learning continuity ay yun pong curriculum. Because we have never had this kind of a situation po na pandemic. Kaya challenging po sa level ng curriculum. Kasi kung ito ay naging bagyo lang, naging lindo, lahat po ng mga temporary learning spaces, emergency feeding, yung aming pong learners kits, teachers kits at lahat ay regular pong umaandar. May challenges lang sa procurement but they are moving, Senator. Ang greatest challenge po dahil kakaiba at nasa bahay ang mga tao at lahat ay ito pong curriculum, delivering it in a very different context. Kaya yun po ang tingin ko na kailangan pagtuunan ng mga bills because all the rest are actually po working naman. Within the parameters, within the protocols of the NDRIMC and all the laws and the policies at mga operational guidelines and planning that are actually regularly happening among member agencies of the NDRIMC. So yun po ang aking take doon, Senator Win.
Thank you, Director Ronnie. Thank you for that. And would like to request from DepEd a position paper on all of the bills that I mentioned earlier. And I'd like to also request from the body the same position paper on all of those bills. We recognize Senator Pia.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Sorry, who was the one speaking? I didn't catch your name. DepEd is doing their job. So for that reason, I did not specific bill. But since we're talking about it, I feel preventive healthcare, a lot of that will end up in terms. A lot of that can only be implemented by way of educating and making people aware of what is preventive healthcare. No? And so if you dissect that, my question would be simple things like, where is it in the curriculum that you now talk about preventive healthcare and tell the children how important 8 hours of sleep is, the quality of food, tie that into the food supply, that they plant their own food in their own homes, that you have sustainable communities that can produce, the bulk of the food. 10 years ago, hindi pa uso yung isig. So, kung hindi tinuturo yung critical thinking, pinamemorize lang kung ano yung lifestyle diseases na yan, edi hindi maiisip nitong batang to who's now in high school na, oh nga, lifestyle disease din yung isip na yan kasi meron ding effect pala sa akin. So that's why this critical thinking is so important. And then I don't know how you will be instilling collaboration at this point, because normally when you have regular classes, diba, they can collaborate, they can work together. I won't go back into that. I don't expect an answer now. But I'm just saying, can we ensure that the teachers are delivering the education and ensuring that these 4 C's are being learned by the students in the process, in connection with all these other subject matters that my colleagues and I want to be included in the curriculum. Yun lang, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, that's go ahead.
So yes, thank you very much, Senator Pia. You requested report on how we covered health issues you mentioned in our curriculum. We will submit as soon as possible, including this strategy on how the 21st century skills are actually developed among the learners. Be assured that we have ongoing research activities, and I think there are existing results, initial results that we can also share with you and the committee relative to how the 21st century skills are covered in the actual classes and even up to the assessment, because we understand that some of this may not be assessed using the traditional paper and pencil approaches. We have actually be able to discuss among ourselves how this could be done.
And precisely that is the challenge, no, Mr. Chair, kasi when you develop these skills, they are not the type that will be included in a typical year-end assessment test, no? Pero technically, pag nagawa nila ng maayos to, critical thinking, they learned how to communicate, there's no way naman na hindi rin naman sila papasa doon, di ba? But initially, there might be a gap. Initially, you may not see it reflected in the memorization that is normally required in traditional examinations. Pero umaandar na yung critical thinking, and when it's not naman when the process is complete, but when the process is more mature in the mind of the learner, then it's so much easier for them to learn, di ba? Because at the end of the day, mag-memorize nga siya, pasado siya sa lahat ng multiplication, addition, subtraction, but they don't have the skills of communication, collaborating with their colleagues. Well, then ano din naman yung na-create nating tao at the end of 18 years, di ba? What kind of a citizen is that who does not have that ability to collaborate, that ability to communicate well, that cannot help us contribute to the survival and the success of our nation without that critical thinking? So it's a challenge, I recognize, but we shouldn't really consider it a stumbling block, di ba? And that's where there should be less. That's where I will not say that I'm anti-testing, hindi naman, but that's where I am not really a proponent of testing, because you will fail to capture this kung test-based lang tayo. Diba? And precisely because we did so poorly in the PISA test, then ang syempre reaction natin, teka muna, ayusin naman natin yun. So I'm not against it because what other ways do you have to monitor, but it should not be the end. So yun lang, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. Yes, Yusek Omali.
Opo, very quickly po, a reiteration and maybe another way of politely stating the DepEd's official position with respect to measures that seeks to legislate curriculum. Indeed, Mr. Chair, that maybe, Mr. Chair, measures that seeks, for example, to provide topics to be taught as a standalone subject. Medyo mabigat po ito, Mr. Chair. But if measures are just there to mandate that we should integrate this in our various subjects, the way it's articulated by our Director Ronnie Co kanina. But I want to be very specific, Mr. Chair. We have submitted to this honorable committee a copy of our BELCP and the reduced most essential learning competencies, which includes the matrix, yung sinasabi po naming reduced na 5,689 MELC na lamang po, one of the annexes. So, halimbawa po, Mr. Chair, para po magkaroon po tayo ng ideya, sa page 263, meron na po ang committee na ito pero pwede po namin ibigay po muli. Ito po yung aming curriculum matrix, 4th quarter, grade 1, on the subject health. Meron po dyan, itinuturo po namin, may mga modules kami so that our learner will be able to demonstrate understanding of safe and responsible behavior to lessen risk and prevent injuries in day-to-day living. Tinuturo po yan, 4th quarter, weeks 1 to 10, nakalagay po kung ano po yung bawat dapat po matutunan ng bata. Isa pa pong halimbawa, that's first grade, Mr. Chair. Second grade, 4th quarter po muli, able to demonstrate and our children to have an understanding of basic rules to ensure safety at home and in school. That could be seen at page 265, Mr. Chair. So kompleto po ito, understanding of risk to ensure other things that the bill seeks to achieve. So nangyayari na po ito. Ngunit of course, we will always say that we are all aware that the legislative power is plenary. We will always submit to the collective wisdom of Congress and this honorable committee. So we just would like to request, and that's what we saw in all the various bills, so long as this will not be mandated to be taught as a standalone subject, the way our USEC Dutch mentioned, we really support and we welcome these measures. And finally, Mr. Chair, we could also look at Section 6 of RA 10533, Mr. Chair, which provides a mechanism. It mandates for the creation of a curriculum consultative committee. Yun po, Mr. Chair, baka po pwede po datin doon dalhin lahat po ng mga panukalang batas na may kinalaman po sa curriculum. Dito po sa Curriculum Consultative Committee na ito na inilagay din po ng Kongreso sa ating K-12 law. At yun po yung committee together with various agencies including CHED and TESDA and our stakeholders, private sectors. And we will be very glad to also invite this honorable committee, including the committee of our Senator Pia Cayetano, as a mechanism to look at all measures po, Mr. Chair, that seek to amend the K-12 curriculum. Baka dun po maganda pong mekanismo yon. Binigay na rin po iyon with all the wisdom of our legislators when they legislated and enacted RA 10533. Kayo po na po mismo, Mr. Chair, ang naglagay po ng mga mekanismo para po tingnan muli yung aming basic education curriculum. So that's Section 6, and we will be very happy to to hear inputs from our Congress on this matter. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Yusek. Personally, I'm also quite very careful, with adding too many concepts in the curriculum, especially legislated curriculum. I'm very careful with that, and I would listen and heed to the recommendation of the Department of Education. We all know that curriculum needs to be dynamic, and it should respond to the times as quick as possible. And I know also that in our many discussions that our direction is to decongest the curriculum and focus on competencies that are attuned to the time. So we will request from DepEd and also from the body a position paper on all of these laws. But rest assured that we will put a lot of weight to the position paper of DepEd as to the curriculum and how to comments po on the update and the bills that we were discussing.
Hello.
Nandiyan pa ho kayo.
Hi. Can I be heard po?
Yes,
Hello.
Dr. Ginny. Yes, you're very clear. Very clear po. Super clear.
Magandang hapon. Thank you po. Magandang hapon, Mr. Chair, and everyone in the group. The Philippine Normal University po does not post any negative reactions to all the bills filed. Lamang po ay gusto ko lang dagdagan na sinusuportahan po namin ang layunin ng Senado na wag i-legislate ang curriculum. Napakarami pong nangyayari sa mundo ngayon at ay hindi natin ma-determine at any given time. So legislating a curriculum is a disservice to the openness of learning as a whole. Another level po ay ang tinitingnan po natin ng committee ninyo, Mr. Chair, at ng mga kasama natin dito ay ang basic education curriculum. Mulit-muli ko pong ilalatag na kapag ka ang basic education curriculum ay hindi nag-match sa curriculum ng kolehiyong pangguro o ng CHED curriculum for the pre-service teacher education, hindi na naman po magiging handa ang ating mga guro na ituro at pagyamani ng anumang idadagdag natin sa curriculum ng Department of Education. So, palagi po namin isinusulong sa pamantasang normal ng Pilipinas na palaging kailangan silang magmamatch. Ang lawak ng curriculum ng basic education ay dapat lawak din ng curriculum ng pre-service teacher education. Ganun din ang training. Sa aspeto pong iyan, nais naming sabihin na ang konteksto po ng curriculum ngayon in the whole world ay outcome-based. Ibig sabihin, pag tinuro ang competencies, laging ang titingnan natin ay anong naging outcome natin. Ano ang naging epekto ng competencies na natutunan ng bata. In the PISA results po, ang pagtingin ay hindi competency, kung hindi ang pagtingin ay lawak ng pag-i-integrate ng mga competencies. And sadly, baka hindi ito ang pagtingin natin sa curriculum. We still account for an individual segmented competencies, which we hope will turn into an integrated competency, an integrated curriculum. So kanina po, sususugan ko rin yung sinabi ni Senator Pia Cayetano kanina, ang konteksto ng disaster preparedness, disaster resiliency ay importanteng aspeto ng curriculum. Sadly, ito po ay itinuturo as segmented again rather than integrated in the learning of science, for example, in the learning of critical thinking, in the learning of logic, in the learning of culture, right? Even in the learning of our indigenous knowledge, our indigenous concepts. So, yun po ang isinusulong namin. Finally, Mr. Chair at sa mga kasamahan, ang mga guro po, muli ko pong isusulong na tingnan natin din ang aspeto ng ating mga guro sapagkat kapag tiningnan natin lamang ang curriculum, you see, curriculum is a piece of document. It will result in changes, big changes in the community. But the curriculum is half only of the indication of a good education. The other half is our teachers. Now, our teachers are the components, the most important component to be able to deliver the curriculum. So pag tiningnan po natin ang curriculum, sana po matingnan din natin ang aspeto where our teachers are. Dahil kapag isinulong natin ang ang mga bagay papunta sa curriculum, sana laging kadikit ang pag-lift ng ating mga guro para ito'y ma-deliver contextually. Finally po, sasabihin ko na kami po ay natutuwa sa mga bills na naipasa. Naniniwala po kami na, na-i-file. Naniniwala po kami na ito ay makakatulong sa patuloy nating pag-aaral ng ating education system, not only in the learning continuity plan of the Department of Education, but also that of the future, that of looking into the future for the benefit of our children. Salamat po.
Bear that in mind in finalizing the law. I can see Governor Dax Kua, who is the president of ULAP. Governor Dax, any comments? We tackled two things. No, one is the update from DepEd, and then number two, the bills that were filed by several senators on pandemics and disaster response. So you can comment on any of those two topics, Governor Dax.
Salamat po, Senator Gatchalian, to all the members of the committee, to all the other senators po na nandito and the resource persons. Good afternoon. Briefly, upon the bills that are pending in your honorable committee, Mr. Chairman, we support all the bills. And we have a general recommendation lang po na sana when there's a crafting of the IRR, baka pwede pong ma-include ang ULAP as a member of the team that will indeed craft the IRR. So, and then one very minor specific recommendation dun sa mga volunteers, dun sa school resumption, baka pwede lang pong i-expand pa. So we have articulated that position in our submitted position paper, Mr. Chair. Lastly, if I may be so bold, Senator, I was informed that there was a hanging question earlier regarding the reopening of and resumption of school. Sa tingin ko po, Senator, maganda naman yung intention ng DepEd, at lalo na sa mga areas that can manage to reopen school. But I think given the situation where certain areas are
And then from the onset of this crisis, apat na lalawigan yung parating zero COVID. Batanes, Aurora, Dinagat, and Quirino. Pero as of July 21, nawala na yung Quirino.
actually we went... sige, Senator.
Apparently, I heard that meron na kayong cases diyan or case, no, in Quirino.
we registered our first case kailan ba yun? 2 days ago. 2 days ago. And we're still, we have already started our contact tracing. Ang nakakapagtaka, Senator, Mr. Che, hindi namin alam kung saan nanggaling kasi itong taong ito ay walang travel history at talagang walang exposure sa known COVID patient. So, ang tanong dyan, saan nanggaling? Is it nanggaling kaya yan sa mga taong kasama niya sa trabaho or sa bahay? Or nanggaling kaya sa mga gamit na siguro, syempre, someone in their community or in their household lumalabas para bumili ng necessities. So, saan kaya nanggaling? That's still a puzzle for us, given that this is our first case.
Yeah, I think that reinforces that the situation is very volatile. Ngayon wala ka pero bukas meron na, and hindi natin alam kung gaano kalawak pa yung pagkalat nito sa isang lugar, because I was monitoring the provinces na wala, and Quirino constantly wala, no? And only nga lang nagulat ako na nawala na dun sa mga 0 cases. So goes to show na talagang very volatile ang situation. But from ULAP, Governor, do you recommend from ULAP, what is the sentiment of the local government units? Are we ready by August 24? Are we going to be ready by August 24 in terms of opening classes? From a local government standpoint.
Yun nga, Senator, Mr. Chair, kasi talagang depende sa context talaga eh. No, lalo na kunwari, siguro I would presume na kung nasa urban setting or highly urbanized in the metro area at marami namang area covered by internet, and most families have gadgets, or just in the case of Valenzuela, the mayor has a strong program subsidizing gadgets, then possible siguro dahil pwede nilang gawin sa bahay. Pero kung yung mga malalayo, medyo iba talaga ang sitwasyon, Mr. Chair. And that's why contextualization will be, in my own opinion, very, very important. I'd like to share with you though that the League of Provinces, which is one of the pillars of the ULAP, as a member of the ULAP, no, has expressed a recommendation to again postpone the opening. So that is the position of the LPP as by Governor Velasco in many forums that we have opened this topic. Yun siguro ma-share ko sa inyo. Pero sabihin ko po, Mr. Chair, context plays a very important role kasi ang hirap pong magpataw ng isang rule sa isang bansa na iba't iba po yung sitwasyon. And congratulations to Valenzuela for your great initiative.
Thank you, Gov. Well, definitely that's the direction right now. No, August 24 is the school opening, but there's an uncertainty right now yung mga areas under MECQ, no, and whether matutuloy ito o hindi. No, so I recommended to DepEd kung matutuloy yung MECQ, then we should postpone school opening, because obviously the MECQ is a signal that the situation is not improving. So thank you, Gov.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Yusek Umali.
Opo, on that particular intervention of our GovDaxCua and then the subsequent comment of the Honorable Chair, may I share some views ng ating pong kalihim, Mr. Chair, base po sa kanya pong malalim na pakikipag-usap po. Ang ating pong kalihim, Leonor Liling Magtolis Briones po, Mr. Chair, talaga pong tulad ng nabanggit po ninyo, halos hindi po na natutulog at patuloy po lalo na nung nangyari nga po itong deklarasyon ng MECQ, ano tong relasyon po nito, ano pong epekto nito sa ating school opening. Talaga pong paulit-ulit na kinausap po yung ating mga regional directors, mga schools division superintendent para makuha po yung kanilang pananaw dito. At ito po yung klaro po sana, Mr. Chair, dahil alam ko po
may mga mamamahayag po na nandito sa ngayon. Hindi po natin isasaalang-alang ang kaligtasan ng kahit sino man, maging ang ating pong mga guro, hindi gurong kawani ng ating kagawaran, lalong-lalo na po ang mga mag-aaral po natin, pati ang mga magulang, sa ating pong sa ngayong desisyon na magpapatuloy po ang August 24 school opening sa ating pong pampublikong paaralan. So ano pong ibig sabihin nito, Mr. Chair? Ang direktiba po ng ating Ma'am Liling Briones ay doon po sa mga lugar na diniklarang MECQ, wala pong pamamahagi ng mga self-learning modules o retrieval na mangyayari na ating pong ini-envision when we do the BELCP and the way we are articulating it for the first 2 weeks, Mr. Chair. Ang sabi po ng ating Ma'am Liling Briones, dito po sa mga lugar na nadeklarang MECQ, kaya wala po dapat tayong ipangamba na baka po mahawa ang ating mga guro dahil epektibo po yung rules natin dito on alternative work arrangement, na hindi naman po sila inuobligang pumasok sa ating mga paaralan o kahit anuman, pati yung mga regional offices, etc. Dahil nga po, Mr. Chair, yung first 2 weeks natin will be devoted to psychosocial intervention and debriefing activities. Yung mga lugar, Mr. Chair, na kung saan mayroon naman pong kakayanan, lalong-lalo na po sa mga pampribadong paaralan, tulad po ng nabanggit kanina ng ating kaibigan si Attorney Noel Estrada, na online, they are very ready. They're very much, so we cannot even say we postpone school opening, for example po, Mr. Chair, sa Metro Manila. Dahil marami rin naman po dito, online-based learning po, Mr. Chair, ay maaari. Inuulit ko po, sa first 2 weeks, wala pong mangyayaring talagang mahigpit na pangangailangan sa ating pong mga self-learning modules. Kung kaya't yung mga sinasabi po natin na baka mahawa, ay hindi po dapat mangyari. Dahil mismo si Ma'am Liling Briones na po nagsabi, hindi po pwede yan. Dahil tulad po ng sinabi ninyo, mahalaga po ang kaligtasan ng ating mga kaguruan. Ang isang hamon po kasi, Mr. Chair, so that's the decision of the Department of Education right now as we speak. So even in MECQ, tuloy po ito, pero wala nga pong aktibidad. Pasensya na po kayo, paulit-ulit kasi yun po ang pinangangamba ng lahat, na baka mahawa sila dahil nga puro psychosocial activities lang naman po ito. Ang hamon po kasi, Mr. Chair, kapag pinag-usapan po natin ang suspension of school opening, yung talagang imumove po natin sa lugar pong ito, Mr. Chair. Hindi ko po sinasabi na wag po natin gawin na wala po tayo, ay po natin pangunahan ng ating Ma'am Liling Briones, baka dumating po yung punto na gano'n na nga ang magiging desisyon. Pero ang isa pong hamon dyan, Mr. Chair, ay pag hinusog po yan ng isang buwan, logically, yung April 30 na school, logically, Mr. Chair, na end of school calendar will now become May 30. And then so on so forth. Yun po yung unang, at lalo na po ngayon, 2021, 2022, magkakaroon po ng eleksyon, Mr. Chair, binabahagi lang po natin na ang ating mga silid-aralan po, buwan po bago po mag-eleksyon ng 2022, tuloy-tuloy po yan ay kakailanganin ng ating mga silid-aralan. Pero inuulit ko po, napakaganda po ng batas. Kung meron po talagang sitwasyon na dapat pong isuspindi, bakit po hindi? Ngunit nung binuo po yung BELCP, Mr. Chair, and even if we look at the existing MECQ guidelines of IATF, if we look at the guidelines there, what is being prohibited is face-to-face learning, which we are definitely not doing naman by August 24. At ano po, Mr. Chair, yung BELCP talaga pong ikinasayan para nga po makita itong precisely itong mga sitwasyon pong ganito. At ang isang hamon dito po, Mr. Chair, ay paano po kung bilang polisiya ay yun po ang ating gagawin na kapag may MECQ, suspendido ang klase. Mr. Chair, dati po nasa ECQ tayo sa Metro Manila, nag-MECQ, nag-GCQ, tapos ngayon nag-MECQ uli. Sa mga tuwid, pwede po uling mangyari yan, 2-3 buwan po muli. So wala na naman po bang pag-aaral na mangyayari? Ang sabi po ng ating kagawaran ng edukasyon, ng ating Ma'am Liling Briones, so sa ngayon po, that should be taken care of. Pasensya na kayo, Mr. Chair, paulit-ulit ko sinasabi, wala namang gaanong learning that will really takes place, and we will adjust the activities in these MECQ areas. Pero meron din po siyang utos na in the future, pag nangyari uli ito, we should be able to navigate this kind of situation. Dahil hindi naman po pwede po na bawat MECQ suspendido ang klase. But as a last option, Mr. Chair, yung sinabi po ni Ginoong Willie Cabral, very viable option. We could treat it as hindi naman po natin kailangan iusog ang ating school opening, and thereby if we do that, iuusog din natin yung ending ng school calendar. Pwede rin naman po natin gamitin yung ating kasalukuyang alituntunin sa pagsususpindi po ng klase maski wala pong pandemya. Yun po yung nasabi ni Ginoong Willie Cabral kanina. Then that's possible. That's the present guidelines that is effective right now. May bagyo, walang pasok, tapos hahabulin na lamang po natin by way of make-up classes. So that may mean additional modules to be learned, distant learning mode or manner ng ating mga anak. Kung sa halip na 10 modules lamang ang kanyang kailangan basahin sa loob ng 1 linggo, baka maging 20, ahabulin natin. So may mga ganun pong pagsaalang-alang. Pero gusto ko lang po sana klaruhin, kaya po ako nag-intervene ng ganito. Klarong-klaro po na ang ating Ma'am Liling Briones, tinitingnan po lahat yan. At sa ngayon, yung amin pong binabanggit nga, dahil wala naman pong, siguro pang 5 ulit ko na po ito, Mr. Chair, pagpaumanin ninyo, na mangyayaring aalis ang mga guro dito sa mga may MECQ area, bibisita, dahil in-adjust nga po eh. Yun po ang sabi ni Ma'am Liling. I-adjust ang i-deliver nating mga na pag-aaral para tumugon dito sa mga agam-agam. Dahil talaga naman pong yan ay primordial, it's one of the primordial, it's not the primary consideration of our secretary. Kaya sana po maunawaan po ng lahat na hindi po ganun lang na parang hindi namin naririnig ang lahat ng mga nasasabi. We are adjusting naman po. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Yusek. Well, we have to admit, no, kung ang situation ay lumalala, then may mga limitations rin tayo sa gagawin natin. And part of this learning continuity plan is physical movement, no? Yung pagbibigay ng yung self-learning modules, yung mga parents pupunta sa eskwelahan, meron talagang physical movement. And wala naman kagustuhan na lumala yung sitwasyon, no? In fact, I was really hoping for the best na by August 24 mag-stabilize situation. But we just need to admit that the situation is becoming quite uncertain. Sabi nga ni Governor Dax, hindi nga niya alam kung saan nanggagaling because it's really very uncertain right now. Ang sinasabi ko lang naman is the situation right now, and it seems to me that it's not improving, no? At we just have to respond accordingly if the situation is not improving. That's why we created that law, is to give the flexibility to postpone school opening. But of course, that decision will rest on a bigger picture that the President and IATF will analyze. But on the ground, no, ang naririnig ko lang kasi on the ground, Yusek, yung mga teachers natin talagang pag sinabi mong school opening, ang nasa isip nila, lalabas sila at magbibigay ng itong self-learning modules. In fact, if you look at all of the dry runs, meron talagang physical movement. Lahat ng video may physical movement one way or the other. But again, no, this is a recommendation. That's my personal recommendation. Ang League of Provinces, my personal recommendation. Si GovDax, my personal recommendation. And you just have to take into consideration all of these recommendations because these are coming from the ground and also from people that we are in touch with.
Mr. Chair, we really appreciate talaga pong paggaling po sa inyo, Mr. Chair, at kay GovDax ko at sa lahat po ng ating mga senador. Talaga pong pinapahalagahan po yan ng ating Ma'am Liling Briones. At alam niyo po yan, Senator Win, kaya nga po kaagad-agad she asked us to arrange a briefing para po marinig po namin ang President. We will po, Mr. Chair, at dadalhin po lahat ng sinabi niyo po sa ating kaligay. Salamat po.
I'm hoping for the best na yung sitwasyon natin ay mag-improve. we're all hoping for the best. So with that, would like to again open the floor to any comments, any last comments po on the topics at hand. Kung meron ho kayong gustong i-raise about the update or the bills, feel free po to just raise your hand or speak on the microphone. Kung wala naman po, would like to end this hearing. Let me just remind DepEd for some submissions as requested by the senators. Number one, yung timeline po nung IRR, Yusek Umali, requesto ni Senator Tolentino. Number two, yung underutilized private schools. This will come from the private sector, the private school group, kay Attorney Erap. And number three, yung security as to the support that we will give our teachers in terms of health, in terms of aftercare, in terms of testing. So that will come from USEC and Sevilla. No, so please submit this to us on or before August 19, which is 1 week from now. So with that, thank you very much for your time. I went 1 hour overboard from our intended adjournment, but maraming salamat po sa inyong comments, and feel free, no? So to everyone, feel free to send us your position paper on the matters that we discussed earlier. Yusek Kumali.